recently what I've learned is if something seems scary, I want to do it more. And I think it's because I'm learning that like usually what we're avoiding, there's happiness on the other side of it. There's something major or some kind of growth.
All right, what's up everybody? Welcome to the show. Welcome to the What You Don't Hear podcast. I'm your host. My name is Ross Tyson. I am a creative director, a filmmaker, a writer, a thinker, a doer of many things, but of course, most importantly for this, I'm a podcaster as I bring you these open journal dives into people's lives every other Monday, where I sit down with my guests and I chat with them about, well, just about everything, including their life story, covering all the ups, all the downs, and all the thoughts and feelings in between. So on this week's episode, I sat down with my friend Shaena Rabbani. Shaena is a comedian from right here in Columbus and has honestly a very interesting story of how she even got into comedy in the first place. Actually having decided to try and do stand-up comedy before she even actually knew what it was. But I won't spoil anything. I'll let her tell the story. You'll hear all about that in this episode. But all in all, this is a very fun conversation, and I truly do appreciate how much Shaena shared in this about how she grew up and struggles with self-esteem issues and where that spawned from, and how she's grown and totally changed as a person, all for the better, and so much that I even get to share about myself in this one too. So it's pretty fun in relation to a lot of what Shaena's experienced. So yeah, all in all, this is a really, really good conversation, at least in my opinion. I might be biased. It is my show after all, but I'll let you decide, so let's just jump in. Here is episode 44 of What You Don't Hear.
That's why it's what you don't hear, because you don't hear it. No? Okay, don't start it like
no, that's what? No, let's start it like that. Yeah, what kind of great jokes do you have? What is it?
I don't have any.
Perfect.
I just get camera shy. Like
This is all staying in for sure.
No.
Yep,
Okay.
it definitely is.
Okay,
Yeah, this is not a good part for you to tell me. Like, I'm like really shy around cameras. So then I'm like, all right, yeah, we're starting, and you're like, okay.
Oh my gosh.
Great. So like, can you look at me or not? Okay. Let's make it official.
Okay.
Shaena, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Or, okay,
No.
This is actually a great way to start it.
Okay.
Is it, do I welcome you by saying, Shaena, hey, what's up? Or do I say Iggaby? Is your first name, is it Iggaby, Shaena? Is that your full name? I think that's a great thing to honestly get out of the way at the start for anybody listening to this. Is true or false, your name is Iggaby Shaena?
True and false. Can it be both?
True and false? Okay, now you're confusing people and me. So it's true.
It's false. It's true. It's okay. So Iggaby Shaena is my Instagram name. Yes. It's I go by Shaena.
Yes, but I go by Shaena.
Right. But I
not
don't know how
Iggaby.
much longer it's going to be Iggaby.
That's true. Maybe by the time this is out, Iggaby is done.
Right.
Maybe this is the last remaining remnants of Iggaby right here, as we're giving it that much attention.
I really think this is it.
Honestly, the first time you told me that was incredible because I never... And I don't know, maybe I just looked into it differently. I don't know. I never looked at it and I was like, oh, Iggaby.
Oh, you didn't think it was Iggaby?
No.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, I go by Shaena. Okay, yeah.
Okay,
I go by, I get it. Like it was fine. But apparently a lot of people, from what you've told me at least,
Yes.
think that your name is Iggaby Shaena.
Yeah. So my Instagram name, because there's no spaces, some people will say, is it Iggaby Shaena? Yes.
Iggaby Shaena.
All the time.
Well, now people know. Right at the beginning of this podcast, we are getting that out of the way.
Yeah.
It's not welcome to the show, Iggaby Shaena. It's just Shaena.
Yeah, Iggaby is my middle name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't go by your middle name. Yeah.
No.
Of course, yeah.
Duh.
You go by your last name,
Right.
Shaena.
Right.
Apparently. And what's your first name? Just so we get to know each other well here.
Iggaby. No.
Iggaby Shaena.
Iggaby.
I'm going to put that on all the promotional materials for this show.
Iggaby.
Okay, we were talking a little bit before we actually started rolling. I am so stoked we are finally getting to do this.
Me too.
I feel like I say that every episode to everybody, but I am usually pretty excited to talk to everybody. But you and I would say maybe we've become pretty decent friends in like a small window of time over like the last like month or 2 months or something like that.
Yeah. In the last like month and 27 days, I would say that we.
So you have been counting specifically. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. According to my calendar,
Let me
it's marked
check.
down like this. But even though I would say we've become good friends in that time, we have also kind of strategically made sure to not really talk about anything about you or your life.
Yes.
And we've talked about pretty much anything else under the sun, basically. Of course, Igby. We got that out of the way pretty early.
Yes.
But I feel like we've danced around so much, and the purpose is like I knew I wanted to have you on the show, and you knew you were going to come on the show because after we talked about it, I was like, all right, we'll save all the spicy secrets. So I'm excited to finally actually be able to, I don't know, get to know my new friend Shaena.
Yeah,
because
that's so sweet.
I just know all of these other things and all these ideas we're like talking about together, all this sort of stuff. But I don't really know anything that deep about you. I know a couple things, and not to spoil the episode, but I know you don't really watch like movies.
Yes.
You're not too familiar with movies
Yes.
and shows and all that sort of stuff. But further than that, there's like I feel like I know just very base level things. So I'm super excited to like actually to not have to hold that stuff in anymore and let you just be like, here it is. Here's my entire life. Some of which, and maybe this is too big of a dive off the deep end at the very beginning,
Sure.
but I'm just going to throw it out there.
Okay.
Something that you recently said to me that I want to immediately dig into
Immediately. Okay.
is you told me that you and I wouldn't have been friends, like with you as a past version of you. You were like, I don't think we would have been friends, and more so, you said, I don't know if I would have wanted you to be my friend if I was whatever the way I was a few years ago. So, there's a lot of information that I really want to uncover there. What do you mean by that?
Okay, yeah. So first I want to say I'm so happy that you waited for here because I agree. We've had so many conversations, but you've absolutely like waited to hear my story. And I think that's so cool because you wanted this to be genuine. Like you didn't want to just ask me a bunch of questions that you already knew the answer. So all of your reactions are real, which gives me such more insight into your podcast because you genuinely care and you're going to be genuine about it. And I think that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Okay. So so I have done a lot of growing in the past 2 years as a person. And the reason I said that I don't think we would have been friends is because I was somebody who I didn't like myself. And so I really needed other people to like me on like a desperate level. So I would change and morph myself into whatever someone else wanted. So if I would have met you, I would have been like, I would have pretended to like movies. I would have pretended to watch movies. I would have been like, yeah, I love haunted houses. Like, I don't. But I would have wanted you to like me so badly that I would have not been true to myself. And you would have just had this version of me that I created for you to like. And the person that you met was me. I was myself. I don't care. Not that I want us to have a friendship, but if you don't like me, it's not the end of my world. Where 2 years ago, if someone didn't like me, that was it. That was like the end of everything for me. I would have been so sad.
I honestly can't imagine that version of Shaena.
Good.
and clearly, I've only just met you in like the last month.
Sure.
Again, there's so much I don't know about you, but just knowing you in that little bit of time, you're such this like just positive, energetic, like thoughtful, like just fun to talk to person. So thinking about some weird version of you that's like just kind of molding yourself into like, oh yeah, just like please like me and please. And I mean, you just said it yourself, like you've done a lot of changing in 2 years, but for you to go from that, or unless you were also doing comedy at that point in time, no. Okay, so yeah, for you to go from like that of being like unsure about yourself and all this sort of stuff to now being a comedian and doing all this stuff, like that is quite the change. Like that is a huge change, and that's wild to me.
Yeah, and I don't think that the outside of it looked very different. Like I think I still was energetic and positive and all those things that you said, but it wasn't like a genuine, if that makes sense. Like now I do it because I genuinely want to, and there's some people who don't, like I'm not like that with, but Yeah.
That's very, and I, especially to go from whatever version you would say you were to then doing comedy, which again, we'll back things up a little bit. Cause I was like, let's dive off the deep end immediately. Cause I want to know, but like, I guess that's kind of like the next question is like, how does comedy pop up during that? Because you and I've talked about this, I guess, a little bit of like, I have such an interest in comedy, but I think it's more from like the writing side or like the directing, you know, some sort of comedy show or whatever. And I guess acting and doing it. Basically what I'm saying is, even though I love comedy, I've never been like, oh, I could go do stand-up.
Sure.
And you do stand-up, which is super cool.
Thank you.
So how does that pop up in the midst of you figuring out who Shaena is?
Yeah. It plays, I mean, that's like a huge part of it. So, all right, are you ready?
Okay. This is it. I'm ready. Remember, you can tell all the stories. You can talk as long as you want. You've heard the show before.
Yes, I can. Yes.
Spill all the things.
I feel
tell all the stories.
Safe. Okay, so yeah, I was very different, right? Which is, first of all, I want to say, like, there was nothing wrong with the person that I was. I've come to understand that, like, I was who I was because of the circumstances that, like, my past had brought me to. And I was surviving. You know, that's what I needed to be that way to survive, whatever it was, my childhood, my previous relationships, friendships. And over the past 2 years, I've done a lot of growing. And I would say the comedy comes into play. So about 2 years ago, like 2.5 years ago, let's say 3 years ago, 2 years and no. Okay.
Hold on. Are you lying?
No.
Are you making
3 years ago? No. So like 3 years ago, I was in a, okay, 4 years ago, no. I'm trying to think about the timeline. So 3 years ago, I was in a weird place in my life. I was in like this really weird situation with like a boss. I was in a job that wasn't the best for me. My boss wasn't I don't know. There was just a lot of like weird things that I kept noticing. I felt like I wasn't necessarily appreciated, maybe treated the best. And so I went and saw a therapist. And I was like, hey, can you explain to me like why, like I know this boss like isn't the best to me. I'm not sure why I'm still in this job. And my therapist was like, I guarantee you that this isn't the first relationship that you've played this role, like that you've been someone like that's being taken advantage of or being treated unfairly or doing something that you don't want to be doing. And then I thought about it, and I was in like an 8-year abusive relationship. And I really so I thought about it, and she was right. I was in a really bad relationship for all of high school and all of college. And I was young. I was a little girl. And I was being like manipulated emotionally and like physically. I was being hurt. And it's not all, his fault. I wasn't this great person. I was whatever. I mean, not to put any blame on anyone. But, and so then I asked my therapist, I was like, listen, I'm intelligent. Like, I'm smart. And I was just wondering, like, why would I put myself in these situations and then stay? Even though I know logically it's not serving me. It makes no sense. I'm being hurt, like it hurts. And my therapist was like, well, take a look at your parents or your siblings or your best friends. Somewhere along the line, you learned that people who love you are going to hurt you. And I was like, no. I have amazing parents. Like, my mom is amazing. I've got this amazing dad. Like, I love my siblings. I was like, no way. There's no way. She's wrong. And she, like, laughed. I vividly remember, like, she told me to go write about it. She was like, write about your childhood. Write about your life. And when you come back, let's see, like, if anything changes or if there's any, any difference. And in your story. Like, I wonder if you're going to come back with something different. And so I went home. I started writing, like, about my childhood. And I was like, my mom was really great. And then, like, something, like, unlocked in my brain. And I was like, oh, wait a second. My mom wasn't always the nicest. Like, my mom is amazing, okay? Like, on a level of, like, she did everything she could. And I understand that, like, the way that she treated me is not a reflection of her. And it's because of her own past. But my mom wasn't always the nicest to me. She, I I don't know, like I was like the like joke of my family, right? There was like this joke that my mom would say all the time. She would say that I was like her foster child. I'm not kidding. We would go in public, and my mom's beautiful. Okay, my mom is like a very attractive, blonde, like she's hot. She's great. And I don't look like my mom. I don't look like that. So when we would go in public, I was always wearing like sweats. My mom was always dressed like really nicely. So when we would go in public, she would be like, "Oh, this is my foster daughter, Shaena," almost out of like embarrassment, I mean, like. Yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it was a joke. It was like the joke of my family. I never took anything by it. I thought it was funny. Like I was the foster kid, whatever. Haha, mom thinks I'm the foster kid. My sister, my brother, like my dad, like everyone around us like knew it. But then like when I started writing, years later, like 25 years later, writing that in my story about my life, I was like, wait a second, like this isn't the best. I mean, clearly this is probably where I learned a little bit about this whole thing about the people who love you hurt you, right? Like that's hurtful. That probably molded my self-esteem. That probably is why I stay around people who aren't the nicest, because even though it was very passive aggressive, that was very hurtful to a little kid, Mm-hmm. So I wrote, and then I started writing more and more and more, and my mom used to be very passive aggressive. There was lots of things my mom would say. And my sister is very different than me in the way that she looks. And so we were always treated very differently. And I think it just affected me, like my self-esteem. But I remember I had written something. There was like one line. And it was about like my mom caring more about going to get a manicure than coming to my soccer game. And for some reason, I felt like there's humor in that. Like, there's something funny about this. I don't know what it is, but there's something funny. And then, this is, like, confusing, but at the same time, I was in the middle of writing, I was writing a parody of a song. Like, so simultaneously, as I'm, writing this whatever, I'm also writing a parody to this, like, song. And, I wanted to get my parody produced. I wanted to find a producer. I thought it was, like, the best song ever. I thought it was so funny. So I met this guy who told me, he said, "Hey Shaena, if you come sing your song at my comedy open mic, I will consider helping you produce it if it gets a good reaction." I've never been to a comedy open mic. I've probably never been on stage really like by myself at that point.
That just made me get stressed.
Oh my gosh. It was crazy. I was like, I remember calling my friend. I was like, "I've never sang in my life." It was a rap song is what it was.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a cool offer to get. Yeah. But like literally you saying that, I'm like, open mic and singing or rapping and performing. Okay. Yes. So sorry, I interrupted.
No, I mean, that's how I felt. I was so stressed out about it. Not stressed, but I was like excited, because what if people react well? That would be amazing. Yeah. And then somebody would produce the song, and that's what I wanted. I wanted,
6 months later, you're weird Shaena Yankovic.
Yeah, or Lil Dicky. Yes, yeah.
Lil Igby.
Little Igby.
That's it. That's perfect.
Yes, and so I went to the open mic, and I kind of wrote like a funny introduction to it, because I knew that like I wasn't just gonna go up there and sing it. So I wrote this like story really quickly. I was like, "Hey guys, I'm gonna sing this song." It was a Jewish parody. So the funny thing that I wrote was just about like, it was like, "Hey guys, like I want to get the song produced, but my family, like they're like religious, they're Jewish," and I was like, "But they won't produce it unless the song is kosher." So I've rewritten this rap to make it like more kosher. And I remember like people laughed at that, and technically that was the first time that I had ever written something that got like a reaction that made people laugh. So I did the song, and it's right up there in the top 7 most embarrassing things that's ever happened to me in my entire life.
Top of the iTunes charts. No, yeah, it's right up there in the top of the iTunes charts. Still, I'm like, wow, there's a lot I really don't know about you. Okay, so it was embarrassing.
It was bad. It was really bad. Yeah. And someone came up to me afterwards, and he was like, "Hey Shaena, never ever ever rap again. Like that was not good." But I wanted to be a rapper so badly back then. Yeah, I really did. Yeah. So I thought I was, this is so cool. It wasn't. But that same guy said that your preamble to it was really funny. he said, it sounds like you're a good writer, you know? And at that time I was like, I'm not a writer. What do you know? I don't know what that is. So he basically said to come back to the open mic. And because I wanted people to like me so badly, I was like, oh, well, I want that guy to like me. So if I come back to the open, not really, you know what I mean? But like,
yeah.
Something in me was like, this guy said to come back, so I'm gonna come back. And I went home and I was like, what would I talk about? Like, what would I even talk about on stage? And at the same time, I was writing this story about my family and my life. And I was like, that's it right there. That's what I'm gonna talk about.
Wow. What a weird like just and not like that story is weird, but a weird meshing of like two very different things happening in your life that sort of in a weird way just found a way to come together. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it was very weird timing. Yeah.
Cuz like, you're writing out these stories for like therapeutic reasons.
Sure.
But then at the same time being like, I need material to wow, that is insane. Yeah. Okay, so where does it like? Do you start? Is that the next step? Like you actually are like, oh, I'm going to start forming these stories into jokes then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the next week, I went to the open mic and it was like sentences. I didn't know how to write yet though, like how to write funny. So it wasn't funny. It was just like really sad, probably actually. And I stopped seeing the therapist too. So like I was like, well, I'm telling these stories on stage. Like I don't need a therapist, you know.
There were 50 people in the crowd. I don't need you.
Literally, exactly. And she was like, I'd strongly advise against that. But
so she advised against
quitting the therapy.
Oh, okay.
And like,
Did she say anything about like using this stuff in jokes? Was she like, hey, that's maybe you can turn this into I don't know, positive memories or was she like, don't do that?
No, she did say that an outlet is good. She said like if there's all of these things that are inside of you that like you haven't let go of, sometimes like making fun of them or even just like artists, she said like do that. Like there's sometimes like someone will paint something or someone will write a song about it. But she did say that it was therapeutic to like get them out there. And so I was like, oh cool, well, I don't need you anymore then. I have these free open mics. They were like $5. But yeah, so I did. I went up there and I did those stories. Yeah.
Can you walk me through, as much as you remember, what was it like the first time? Like, I guess whether it was going up to perform the rap or going up for your first official, quote unquote, like open mic where you're like, no, I've written a handful of, like, what is going through your mind when you're doing that? Because again, I think of that and I'm like, hey, I love being funny and I think I can be funny sometimes. But man, going up to deliver jokes to people, like just I guess for lack of a better term, like the courage that takes. Like, I don't know if like that sounds wild to me. So what was going through your mind, like walking out for your first open mic?
Yeah, thank you for saying, I mean, yeah, I think that too sometimes. It's like, it does, I think the initial getting up there, I will say, someone said this recently to me, and it kind of stuck to me, like, going up there isn't what takes courage. It's the going back after many times of it not going so great. But the first time it does, I feel like it does take a little bit of courage, you know, maybe just like some ego or something. I don't know, like what the original, but I was scared. Oh my gosh, I was a wreck. I was so nervous. Like, oh my gosh, I can put myself right back in that spot and feel the feelings all over again. Yeah, it was really scary. I was nervous. I was really nervous. And by then I was still in that, like, I want everyone to like me. And so I think it was really scary. I was nervous. I talked really, really fast. I just like went through it super quickly as I could. And then, I went home and I listened to it. I recorded the whole thing. And I relived the embarrassment again. But yeah, I mean, it was scary, but it was fun. There was it was fun.
Look, I mean, hey, you're still doing it. So clearly there was something where you were like, no, I like this. So what was that something? Like, what was it? Was it a therapeutic feeling of like, wow, it's nice to get this stuff off my chest and share it with people? Or was it like you got a laugh and then you're like, that's like, I want more of that? Was it a mix? Like, what was it that then made you keep having the courage to go back?
I think it's like a mixture. So I did get one laugh. After the song thing, I got one laugh the first time that I went back. One. And it did feel good. It was a feeling like it felt really good. But a lot of people, I think when you ask people like why they start stand up, I think a lot of people share a story of I've always been the funny guy. I've always been like, my friends have always said you should do stand up comedy. And that's not my story. That's not how it was for me. But I used to do this thing, and this is, I'll come back to your question, but this is just, this is so crazy. And I just thought about this actually a couple of weeks ago. So my entire life, since I could write, I've done this thing, and all of my friends know this, like any person that knows me from high school or junior high. When I first got a cell phone in like 6th grade, anytime I made anyone laugh or someone made me laugh, I would write it down for no reason. Like literally my nickname was Notepad. Like people just would knew me as this note, like as a joke. I mean, they wouldn't say like, "Hey, Notepad," but they would. They kind of would.
I'm gonna start.
Yeah, Notepad.
It could be or Notepad.
Notepad, either way. You know what? Yeah, Young Shay works too. That was my rap name. So yeah, like I've always been really fascinated with making people laugh and why they laugh. I wasn't necessarily like this like class clown. But I've always had like a sense of humor, but I always was really fascinated with making people laugh. And then in college, when I got my own apartment, I got this like big notebook, and I put it in the middle of my coffee table. And when my friends would come over, like whenever I would make them laugh, we'd write it down. Everyone had a page in the notebook. People would come over and we'd recite them. Like if, my friend Alyssa came over and I made her laugh, then like we'd open up that page and be like, "Oh, this is funny." Or my friend Chris, or like, whoever.
So other people got involved in it. Like
everybody, they loved it. I would be like,
rad.
"Hey, remember when this happened? Like, Shaena, that happened yesterday." Like, of course I remember. And I'm like, wasn't that so funny?
That's actually so sick though.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would write all these things down
Always.
just because.
For no reason. Yeah. And then I'd lose the notepad or whatever, but yeah, always. And everyone knows this about, like, it was just something that I would do. I don't know why. So when I started comedy, I just felt like it was something like I don't know, it just felt right. It just felt like oh my gosh, like I've always liked to be the center of attention. I always wanted to get attention. I was a middle child, whatever. Like I always just, I don't know. And I do have a sense of humor. I've always liked to write. And I felt like, okay, like this just might. So I kept going because I was like, well, I would hate to not and then wonder what if. And so I just kept doing it.
That is what. Okay, so growing up, you said you're the middle child.
Yeah.
And so you said you were always vying for attention? Was
Yeah.
that kind of like the thing? See, so I'm oldest child.
You're the oldest.
So I've experienced like middle child from a different perspective where I'm just like, oh yeah, like what's up, yeah, middle child.
Sure. Do you even know your middle sibling's name? No.
I'm not real sure. Igby or I just called him Notepad. I don't know. No, so okay, so take me back, like growing up, like what's family dynamic like? How many brothers and sisters, or what's family like?
So I have a younger sister and an older brother.
Okay.
I'm the middle. I already said that. Yeah, so I have 3 siblings, mom, dad. We grew up in Toledo, Ohio. It's super weird too. Like my family, all my extended family lives in Los Angeles. All of my mom's family, all of my dad's family live in Los Angeles. And yeah, this isn't what you're asking me.
No, it totally is.
Okay.
This is
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
No, I asked
what was
just
family
the
like? Yes,
siblings. That's it.
Yes, okay.
You say 2 or 3.
Okay.
Who they are,
Okay,
and
sorry.
then we're done. We move on.
You have like a.
No, that is 100%. Keep going. That is absolutely what I'm asking. Yes.
Okay, yeah. So I was born in Texas though. I was born in El Paso.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then moved to California until I was 5. And then when we were 5, moved to Toledo because my dad got a job. But what was weird is I spent all my summers in LA. So when people say like where I grew up, yes, I grew up technically in Toledo, Ohio. Like that's where I made my friends. But my cousins and like my West Coast was a huge part of my upbringing because I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So summers in LA growing
Summers in
up.
LA. Until I was like in high school. And then once I was in high school, my dad moved to New York, and then I spent all my summers there. So like it was weird. It was like a weird. I grew up, not most people like grew up in one place, but me, it's like I grew up kind of in a lot of places.
Yeah. Okay, so what is like while you're growing up, like what is that dynamic of being a middle child like? Because again, I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
And again, I'm also curious of you saying like, oh, I always was kind of like wanting attention and all that stuff. So what was that dynamic like growing up?
Yeah. So, I mean, this might be different for your family, right? I mean, I can't speak for all middle children. I can speak for myself. And my little sister was like she was the golden child, for lack of a better term, we can say that. And I love my sister. But growing up, there was constantly, like, we were constantly in competition. But that's because of, like, the mom that I grew up with. So I always felt like I had to compete. My little sister was, like, an honor roll student, really smart. She was, looked very different than me. My mom put, like, more attention on her. She dressed, like my mom did. They would go, like, get their nails done together. I was just, I don't know. I was just different. I was, like, my own little person. My mom would always kind of, like, joke about that. Like, oh, just Shaena, being Shaena. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say that there was no attention on me. There was. 'Cause, like, I don't know, but I guess I hate to say, like, I wasn't, like, neglected. There was not, like,
Of course, yeah.
But I was probably just, like, not the one that, like, I don't know. Like, my dad, I don't know, because they were nice, in the sense of, like, my parents would tell me, like, you're smart and you're this. But, like, also, yeah, I didn't get that much attention as far as good attention. It was kind of, like, negative. Like, I needed to do something better. I needed to, yeah.
Right. Which again, you're not saying anything terrible about it. But sometimes I think like parents can be parents because they're also their own human beings and adults and living their own lives. And now they're like, oh, I've got to keep this other thing alive now and try and make it feel great.
Yeah.
But because I mean, I can say similar things about like growing up. Is like whenever I tell the story of like how I grew up, it's like it's not awful and terrible, but it's not awesome either.
Sure.
And none of that's directly because like, oh, my dad did this or my mom did this. Sometimes it is more about maybe what they didn't do. You know what I mean? So it's not like nothing was, at least from what I'm hearing is like, and again, just going off of my own experience and how I can relate to you is like, it's not that there was directly something like bad happening of like, oh, they were abusing me or they were this or they were that. Sometimes it is like, yeah, but they didn't help me when this happened, or they didn't make me feel like they were, there for me in this situation, or you know what I mean? Yeah. Like the first, until I was probably like, I would say from like 4 to 12, I had a very mentally abusive stepmom.
Sorry.
So I never liked going to my dad's. Now I can say all that, while that entire time, still totally loved my dad.
Yeah.
But I wanted him to wake up to the situation. So it was more so about like, he wasn't addressing the situation. He wasn't realizing sooner, oh, this like lady is not a good person, right? She makes a very toxic environment, right? But it probably took a while for him to notice that. Sure. So again, that kind of example is like, I can sit and say like for a handful of years, I feel like I had maybe a strange relationship with my dad. But even then, it wasn't abusive. It wasn't like, it was awesome. It was still fine. But because there was that something missing, there was that like weird thing right in the middle, which was at that point in time, the stepmom that I had.
Sure. It
was that thing that I was like, oh man, like, but you're not seeing like what I'm seeing. You're not understanding this from my perspective. Yeah. You know what I mean? So again, it's more so about like, in that example, what he wasn't doing at that point in time. And then again, at some point it changes and I was like, whoa, this is a night and day difference of like what it's like to be around my dad now that this person is gone. But I think sometimes maybe it is that, where it's like you can't really put it into words because, and this is not an awesome example, but easier example is like if there was like physical abuse or something, it's easy just to put it into words. To be like, yes, I was abused, I was beat, I was, whatever. Then it's easy to be like, oh, that's the negative thing. Yeah. But when it's that kind of like middle thing where you're like, listen, I don't dislike my parents, but there was these weird things, but I don't really know how to articulate them. Like, I'm rambling, but that's kind of like what at least I'm making sense of when you're explaining this. So I think you're making it make sense because again, I don't think there always has to be that immediate explanation or that one example of like, oh yes, it was this that made it difficult. You can still have a very difficult situation or upbringing or life or period of life without having that like super over the top crazy thing that sometimes it feels like. I think sometimes it feels like you have to have that over the top thing in order to be like, yes, this hurt me. Like, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. Did you ever tell your dad? Like, did you ever say like, Dad, I don't like Mary? Or
yes,
you did.
Yes.
Okay.
So that I remember a couple, like, because at that point in time I was like so young that I didn't really know how to. I you know what I mean? Like, I couldn't like confidently walk in the room like, Dad, we need to talk. Like, I am 8 years old. But I remember like a couple very, very awkward like family conversations where it would be like one distinct memory I have is my mom and I, because obviously my mom was aware of all of this.
Yeah.
And we went over to my grandparents' house and my grandpa called my dad because he was also aware, because they were all like, this lady was like she was dictator of everyone. Everyone was like feeling it from her, right? So my grandpa's aware and he calls, my dad over. And of course, my dad sometimes doesn't do the best with like emotional things. So he immediately is like up in arms of like, what is it? Well, yeah, you're telling my mom like, oh, you're making him say things or whatever. But it was like a couple of those attempts that was like, hey, no, listen, like again, in my like little kid words, trying to articulate, hey, this person is not a good person and I do not like them. So it's like the attempts were made, but there was never like a solidified, it's like if I was having that conversation now, I'd easily be able to be like, this is exactly what's happening. This is why. This is why you need to listen to me and do with that what you will. I'll see you later. Whatever it is. So yeah, those conversations were attempted to have been had, but nothing ever came from it until like they actually split. And then it was like, I feel like it was kind of just a like unsaid thing that like once he realized it, he knew. And there was never like a formal really sit down, at least that I can remember, that we were like, hey, yeah, so that 7 years was crazy, wasn't it? Or, whatever. Like there was never like, wow, look back at that. Cause like even now, cause he had, my little sister is with her.
Oh, okay.
So like, I still like will hear stories like now from my sister who is now older.
Sure.
And she's like, yeah, this is, my mom's kind of this. And I'm like, let me tell you, like I experienced it way before you did. And so now it's like, again, my dad realizes those things. So there'll be some sort of comments where he's like, yeah, I'm dealing with this right now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not shocked. Like you sure are. Like, yeah, you are.
And when you're a little kid, I feel like parents, like adults, I see this all the time. I feel like children are just dismissed. Like, oh, he doesn't know. Like, he's just sad, or he's just, maybe his mom's telling him. Or I feel like little kids' feelings are often dismissed as just like, oh, they're just saying that. Mm-hmm. When in reality, like, little kids are like, they have these feelings and you don't know how to articulate it or how to say it. But you knew, but you weren't validated as knowing because you're just little, whatever. Like,
right. So did you ever try to like articulate any of that? Were you like thinking of that even at that point in time? Like with these weird feelings of like, oh, I we make jokes about me being different, but that doesn't make me feel the best. Like, or was it a thing not until the story from earlier where you're writing it out, did it come to?
I don't think so. Like, I think that like whenever I did come to my parents about like something, my mom and stuff would always just say that like I was being dramatic. That was the big thing, was I was always just like the drama queen. Like, oh, Shaena's being dramatic. So because there was that narrative around me, anytime I had any kind of big feelings or I was sad, I would like cry about it. And because I didn't know how, and so whenever it did come to that, it was just me being like, oh, that's Shaena being dramatic. But I can tell that some adults knew in my family. Like, I know that like my dad, my dad's amazing and I love my dad so much. He didn't know what was going on. My dad worked a lot and he was there, like he provided for us and he was at home a lot, but he worked a lot. And so I think that he relied on my mom to honestly tell him the truth about how things were at home. And I think that oftentimes my dad like didn't necessarily know, but I feel like he did, because sometimes he would go out of his way to make me feel very special in the sense of, Shaena, like, you are loved and we love you so much. Like, I often remember my dad just saying things like that. Also, I have various aunts who would say those things. And I think like other people could see it. I think it was but I didn't know. Like, my mom raised me like that since I was little. I didn't question it. I didn't, I didn't think anything of it. It was just, I don't know if you ever heard the analogy of like a frog in boiling water.
I have, but I don't remember it.
So like if you put a frog like in really hot water, he's going to notice it. He's going to jump out. But if you put like a frog in a pot of water and slowly turn up the heat, he's never going to question it. That's just his environment. That's what he's used to, whatever it is. The frog can be a she. Mm-hmm. But like I didn't know. I didn't know that I was getting boiled or whatever. I didn't question it. I didn't think that's my mom. She loves me. And I'm not going to,
Right. And none of that came to light until
I mean,
the earlier story of writing everything out.
I had a lot of issues. There was lots of things about me, issues that I knew were wrong with me, mm-hmm. But I didn't know. No, not until later. I had like low self-esteem, and there was, a lot of anxiety and stuff like that, but I didn't know that was like a direct result of the way that I grew up. I thought, again, there was a narrative that something was wrong with me, and I thought, oh, I'm just flawed. There's something wrong with me, and so,
Yeah. And during all of that time, I feel like I know the answer to this, but I'm still going to ask it. Like, comedy or the idea of that or anything wasn't even...
Never.
Like, you didn't see a stand-up comedy special and you were like, wow, maybe one day I could...
Never. I swear when I tell you this, I watched my first stand-up comedy bit after I did my first stand-up comedy open mic. Like, I swear on my life. The only thing, actually, when I was 12, I did see a small clip of Dimitri Martin for like 2 minutes. I didn't know that was comedy. I didn't know what that was. It was actually like on someone's computer when they first came out. And I was like, I remember thinking like it was a funny thing. I didn't know what that was though. I was like, what's that guy doing? Like, it was funny. I didn't know what stand-up comedy was. My mom didn't we weren't big on TV. When I was little, we didn't really watch much TV. My mom didn't like it. So I remember like, well, mommy doesn't like this. I want mom to like me. I'm not going to like it either. Like, she didn't like TV. So I never watched it with my family. I never watched stand-up comedy. I swear I didn't even know that was a thing. If I had known that you could do that, maybe younger, I would have noticed it and I would have done. So I swear, like, I had no idea that was something you could do.
Dude, that is insane to me. Like, but in the coolest way.
Yeah.
Like, you started finding your way into stand-up before you ever were like, all right, I'm going to actually sit down and see what this thing is all about. That is wild. And so I kind of like joked about it at the beginning of the episode because it's something we've a little bit talked about. But the TV thing, so like, did you, I know this is a weird question, but like, were there TVs in your house and it was just like, no, we're not going to hang out with them? Or was there like no television at all?
So my dad used to sell electronics. Like, that was his when I was little. So we had TVs. We had really nice TVs. We always had like the best TVs. I remember my brother watching TV. So I don't remember watching TV at all, but I did watch it a little bit. I do, like, when I was like in middle school, I do remember watching like 8 o'clock, like Disney Channel. Like, there was always like these movies. I remember that. Part of the reason why I don't remember watching TV, which I learned later on in life, is because I blocked out a lot of my childhood simply to cope, like just to deal with life. So a lot of it is that I don't actually remember it. But so like my brother like used to apparently like the Ninja Turtles, and I used to like Barney. Those types of things, like, I don't remember. I was young and that I blocked out, but it just like wasn't, it was like my mom would rather us go outside and do something. So it wasn't,
Which is fair.
Sure,
like,
that's
not like the worst thing ever.
No, and it wasn't bad at all.
Yeah.
Although the one thing I was allowed to watch, it was called Etiquette with Eddie Cat. And we learned how to like be polite. It was manner. It was a manner video. And he would teach you. What's so funny is I look back at that and it was like, hey, children, like, if your mom's on the phone, make sure like you don't say a word. Make sure that like children, like, it was just funny because like now that I look back, I'm like, I mean, I'm very polite now, like, that's great. It taught me manners. I know how to like behave when I go to other people's houses. But I look back and I'm like, oh, my mom just wanted me to learn how to like just
like stay out of her way.
Stay out of, like,
when mom's making dinner, when mom's lounging, when mom's hanging out, like, just you
go upstairs
somewhere else.
Yes.
Find the room adjacent from her.
Yes.
Shut the door quietly and stay in there until she calls for you.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
If mom has people over, pretend that you're not in the house. Like,
that's wild. Okay. Because again, like, that's probably one of the first things I learned about you is like when we met up for the first time, it's like I'm filled with movie references, and
yes.
my world is storytelling and movies and all that sort of stuff. So I'm always like, oh yeah, it's like that one movie and this, and you're like, I'm not real sure. So that was like super interesting to find, because I don't know, it's like when you explain it, I'm like, that actually makes a lot of sense. To not just be like absorbed by the TV and to go do other things. But now as I sit here, I'm like, you've never seen this movie and that movie? Like, that's so wild to me. Like, and you still, I feel like we've talked about this, but you're still not heavy into TV. Like, you didn't take like the dive of like, now I'm going to watch everything. Like, I mean, I guess technically, I mean, there's things that I'm like, hey, you should totally check this out, and you're like, fuck no, I'm not gonna watch that. Like,
maybe. One day.
No. Don't give me any referrals to watch anything. I don't care.
My list is very long. If people are like, oh, you gotta watch this, it wasn't programmed into me. I don't know how to. I mean, I really have a short attention span. I do have like, I just don't love. I'm not, for some reason, I'm not as entertained by it. Don't get me wrong, there are some shows, there are some movies that I can get engulfed in and like really like, but because I didn't grow up with like obsessively watching it, I'm just not super into it. And it's something that so many of my friends like love the movie references, like boyfriends and like friends, like just have always like, oh my God, like whatever, but my brother was really into Adam Sandler, and so I have seen like all of those. I remember vividly watching those growing up with my brother. But other than that, like, no. And people make references all the time, and I'm just like...
See, but I almost feel like that's like I don't know if there's a right term, but it's like a double-edged sword, because like on half, it's like, oh man, you haven't... Like, there's so much amazing stuff that maybe you haven't seen. But on the other half, it's like, that's great to not be consumed by, oh my God, I have to watch something. I need to always be looking at a screen or always be like... I honestly think that I've fallen into that. Like growing up, I was the kid who would like always have to have the TV on while I'm going to sleep. I'm still like that. I don't have to.
Okay.
And now as an adult, I can be like, yeah, I'm going to turn the TV off.
Sure.
But out of habit, most of the time, I will turn a show on and I will fall asleep to that show.
Oh, wow.
Out of habit of just doing that. And that's also, I think, feeds into like why I stay up so late, is because like
watching.
I would sit and I like TV would be on, so I would stay up and watch TV like when I was younger, waiting for my mom to get off work because she would pick me up from my grandparents. So I would always stay up waiting for mom and stay up watching TV. And I think the habit just continued. So realistically, that's not a great habit to have. So it's great that you're not like fully engulfed into having to watch TV all the time. Because I do, like, I'm definitely that person who's like, hey, I don't want to be consumed by media.
Yeah.
Right?
But I will say, I do use my cell phone a lot. I am on my phone.
Right.
It's TV and movies. I don't want you to think that I'm just like no screens at all, because I am a human being in today's age.
Right.
But yes, I could never. I couldn't fall asleep with the TV on if I tried my hardest.
Really?
Oh my gosh, yeah. But I'm also a very light sleeper, so the noise for me is just like I'd wake up like at 2 a.m. and be like, okay, let's turn this off.
Okay. See, I feel like once I'm asleep, it's just like I'm asleep. I don't know what's happening in that movie. It could be really loud, but.
And sometimes people use it for like noise just in the background. Like when my friends used to come over, the reason I had those Notepads is because I had a TV in my living room, like a big TV, like a nice TV, whatever. But my friends knew this, like it never turned on ever. We didn't, like people would be like, oh, like let's watch a movie. Like no thanks.
Okay, so you're not really watching TV.
Yeah.
We're feeling sort of whatever about like parent things, all that sort of stuff. But like. Was there anything growing up that like you were attracted to of like, I guess better way to ask this is like, was there anything that you started identifying with yourself growing up? Or was it literally not like you were pretty disconnected from that of like the self-esteem battles until you were older? Like, was there something that popped up of like, oh, I really want to, go play sports. And when I'm, playing a game, that's when I feel like Shaena. But even though these other situations might not make me feel the best, like, was there anything like that?
Yeah,
like,
I wanted to be a lawyer. So I originally, so when I was little, first of all, with sports, I was in every sport you can imagine. I was in soccer and karate and basketball. Everything. But my mom, if I ever came home, and actually no, sometimes like, Yeah, if ever I didn't want to go to a game or I just wanted to quit, my mom was just like, that's fine. Like, I don't have to take you, thank God. Like, just, you're good. And so I never like really developed this this thing where you have to stick to it. Like, you gotta like give it your all.
Like the discipline.
Yeah, there's no discipline for me as a kid because we had no boundaries essentially. There was no like, whatever you want to do. Yeah, you don't want to go back to art class, I don't care. Like, and I was good at art. I do remember that. But so when I was little, I remember my parents really wanted my brother to be a lawyer. And I remember, I didn't know this until later in my life, but I remember thinking, oh, they want Chris to be a lawyer. If I'm a lawyer, they will like me maybe. Like, I remember my mom was really excited about my brother being a lawyer. Or like she would always want us to be like, or like plastic surgeons. She would like joke about how like she wanted free plastic surgery like later in life. But that was more like a joke, but I think she really would have wanted that. But so growing up, I wanted to be a lawyer. That's what I wanted. Always, always, always. I wanted to be a lawyer. And then when I went to high school, I changed my mind. I was like, I think I want to be a doctor when I grow up. Like, I think I come from like, I don't know, my mom was hard to please. And so I just wanted to be anything that like I could come home and be like, hey, I didn't know why I was doing it. But I took some classes in high school we got this like chance to do something called med tech, which essentially was taking medical classes early so that when you got to college, your college was shorter. So I took med tech my senior year and I took all these like medical classes. I went to the hospital. I did like all the like I shadowed doctors and stuff like that. I learned, and I quickly realized I didn't want to do that. I was like, I never mind. Like, I'd rather just be a lawyer. So I studied psychology and criminal justice in college, and I was moving out to California to become a lawyer. I was gonna apply and everything like that. That was like 5 years ago. So I moved out there. I applied to schools. I didn't get in. And I was like, okay. There was two schools who were like, hey, listen, like, you had to take like the LSAT, and your LSAT like wasn't, great. Like, maybe if you take it again and you get a higher score, we'll reconsider. The University of Toledo, I remember, like, would have been easier to get into, but I didn't want to go back there. Like, I wanted to stay in California, but it's very competitive. And I probably didn't give it my all. I didn't try the hardest because I think secretly I knew that I was doing it for someone else. So I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to study, but I'm going to figure out what I want to do. And then I became a doula, which is somebody who helps deliver babies. So for a year of my life, I took those courses and I became a doula. My cousin is a doula out there. And, but then I wasn't happy there either. I was like, this isn't, I was sort of lost and disconnected. I really didn't have anything that I loved, that I identified with. Like I said, I was too busy trying to do whatever other people wanted from me, that I never, ever, ever had the chance to just, what's going to make Shaena happy? Well, what does Shaena want to do? Ever, ever, ever.
Yeah. Wow. And you honestly kind of answered like the next thing I wanted to ask you was like, during doing all of those things, like, could you start to identify like, wait a second, like, I'm trying all these things, but I'm not exactly giving it my best efforts because there's clearly a disconnect somewhere in me that's like, you don't actually want to do this.
None of it.
But it's also hard when you don't know what you want to
Correct.
deviate to, probably, right? Where you're like, okay, I know I don't want to do this. But, just to use comedy as an example, it's not like stand-up comedy was like knocking at the door, like,
Correct.
come on, like, just try it already. Like, you didn't have that other thing that was like, I don't know, my interest is kind of going this way. Like, because I guess, like, for me, like, I never went to college. I never did any of that sort of stuff. And it's like, I don't think I knew exactly, kind of in a similar way. Like, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to go do. Right? I wasn't like, I'm not going to go to college because I'm going to go do this.
Sure.
But I just knew that none of that was for me. You know what I mean? So like and luckily enough, like family as they were like, hey, you going to go to college? And once I was like, nah, enough. They were like, okay. Well, just hopefully you do something.
Sure,
right?
sure.
But it's like, I knew I wanted to do something for me. I knew I wanted to do things that I enjoyed. And I didn't even necessarily know what that was at that point in time because I didn't jump straight into like video directing. No. I literally just tried random stuff. So it's almost the opposite of what you're explaining, where you were like trying these random things that you weren't really connected to, that you were just like, I need to find something that unfortunately at that point in time, something that makes somebody else happy for me to be doing. Where I feel like there wasn't one direct thing that I did, but I was like, I feel like doing this for a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, I'll do that. And then, I'm bored with that, so I guess I'll go try this now. And like sort of just like navigated randomly through, whatever waters those are. So it's like, it's interesting to me to always hear when people make those choices of like a career or life, because, and it's super cliche, but obviously like as everybody grows up, like those decisions have to start being made. And then you have to start making decisions like, am I making this decision for me or am I making it for somebody else? For me, I knew that if I decided to go to college, I knew I wouldn't enjoy it. I knew I wasn't going to give it my all. And I knew I would have been doing it just to say, hey, parents, I went to college. Isn't that great? Like I did it. But I just knew I couldn't. And so like, I guess my next question for you is, at what point, because you're not a doctor right now. Is that a secret bombshell that you're going to drop and be like, hey, I'm a comedian doctor?
By the way, no, I'm not a lawyer.
So you're not doing those things now. So, and if I'm jumping ahead too much, like please fill in all the gaps. Again, you can tell all the stories you want, but like, when did you start to make that decision of like, wait a second, like I actually don't want to do any of this stuff? Like, did you finish all the courses and all this sort of stuff? Like,
so before I answer that, I do want to say like the fact that you didn't go to college, I think is so cool, because I thought I had to, like it wasn't like I didn't make a conscious decision. And I think my life, the past 27 years that I've been alive, have been me just like going through life, not making any conscious decisions. So the fact that you made a conscious choice not to go to college, I thought I had to go to college. I mean, looking back, I'm happy that I did, and I would do it over again. Like, I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. But I will say, like, I'm in debt now. I'm not using my degree, and I think that had I have known that there was another choice back then, but, that's fine. I'm just saying, I think it's so cool. I think a lot of people maybe will be like, oh, like, this person didn't go to college or whatever. Some people think that you have to, but me, it's the opposite. I think it's so cool when people know that, like, there's something else out there for you and you're not just putting yourself somewhere because you have to. And I just think that's cool. But yeah, to answer your question, so I took all these courses, right? And my family knew this about me. Everyone knew, like, oh, there's Shaena just doing her thing again. Like, oh, you're gonna be a doctor, you're gonna be a lawyer. Like, everyone knew. Like, I just always took all these courses. And so even when
sorry to interrupt you. Like, they knew that
I just didn't stick to anything.
That you did. Okay. So they were like, oh, she's trying this thing now.
Issues, clearly.
So like, were they stoked that you were going to college to be these like, high degree positions?
Yeah.
Like, was it a mix of like, oh, she's doing this thing, but if she does, darn, will we be proud of her? Or was it just like, was there still no, and I do not mean this in a negative way, but like, was there still like not even support for you doing those things? Was it treated as like, oh, there goes Shaena again. Yeah, you're going to be a doctor now. Go ahead. Like, was it that, or?
I don't know. I mean, looking back, I think like my family's very supportive. I will say, like, they are very supportive. My dad, like my extended family, my mom, they were like supportive, but I don't know if I'm just projecting. I just deep down, I don't know if they really, I really don't know. I think it was just, I wonder if my family kind of knew that wasn't the route that I was going to take, but, law was the one thing. Like, I went to college, and right when I started college, that was what it was for me, right? I was going to do this. I was going to work really hard to do it. I'm going to move to LA. And I don't know. I guess that's a question you'll have to have them on the podcast.
Hey, the next one, I'll get the parents on, and we'll sit down and have a chat.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think they would have really wanted it. I think it would have been really cool for them. And so maybe there was, but even like I'm thinking my aunts and stuff, like cousins, my uncles, they were supportive, but I just wonder if deep down people who know me really knew that like that wasn't, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I did have like support on the surface. Like, it looked like they were there, like supportive. So,
and sorry, I derailed you. You were about to give this whole explanation, and I'm like, tell me about family support.
No, that's great. No. So as far as so with comedy, yeah, all around the same time that I quit this job, I left my ex-boyfriend, I moved to California. It was all around the same time that I started to realize that like this word codependent came into my world. I learned about what codependency is, and for those, listeners who don't know, like codependency is just the idea that like other people's values and other people's feelings matter more than your own. So up until when I was 25, I did not even know making myself happy was an option. I didn't know I could do stuff for me. Like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. So again, like that pot, the frog in the water, like this was how I lived my life, was for my mom, for my dad, for my sister, for my brother, for my friends. Never, so I quit the job and I moved in with my dad, and I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know. My dad is, I was like, maybe I'll go into like what my dad does. Maybe I'll work with, I didn't know. I had no idea. I worked with some of my family members. I tried to do that, and it was kind of slowly starting to happen. I learned about this codependency, and I was like, oh shoot, like there's a lot of things that's wrong with me. And at the same time I started comedy, and I just started to become more self-aware. I started to learn about my personality, to learn about what was wrong with me, to learn about childhood trauma. I learned about all these things, and then that was when I realized, hey Shaena, like I literally asked myself, like, I want you to just forget about everyone else in the world. Like, what would make you happy? And I didn't know the answer, because I didn't know. I swear on my life, like, I didn't have a favorite, anything. Like, whatever, someone would be like, what's your favorite, like, I'm not kidding. I've eaten things that I didn't like because the person chose to go to that restaurant. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I can't stand chicken or whatever. I'm just going to eat it, like, whatever. So I didn't have a favorite anything. I didn't have likes. I didn't have hobbies. My opinion was whatever the person was sitting next to me. And so when I'm asking myself, what do I want to do to make myself happy? I don't know. I don't even know anything, it sounds so sad, but
that's so in a way, looking back at it now, do you feel like that was almost in a positive way, like a totally clean slate? Like, obviously dirtied up by some trauma that you're carrying along during that time, but in a strange way, is it like you're looking at that, and again, you made that decision years ago. It's not like, hey, right now, look at all these things. But like, maybe looking back at that a little bit, it is kind of like okay, I've got this baggage that I'm carrying with me that is making me need to make these decisions and need to figure out who I am. But, and this is just me being overly positive, but it's like almost like, well, now I get to now. You know what I mean? Like, oh, now I get to figure these things out. Now I get to start to form hobbies or things that I like, or, like, was there any part of it that maybe even looking back retrospectively felt like that? Or was it just like I just need to go and do things for me?
That's so interesting. Looking back, you're so right. Like, that's so cool. It was a clean slate, but in the moment, that's not how I looked at it, because I learned. So in that moment, I realized that all the friendships that I had made, all like the relationships I had with, even with like my siblings, with my parents, with my aunts, with my uncles, they were getting a version of me that was there for them, right? So like whatever they needed. You need me at 3:00 in the morning to go and, I don't know, take care of your dog or whatever silly thing, I would do it. And so I did this thing where I completely stopped talking to most of my friends. I cut off, I think it's hard for me to say probably. I cut off contact with a lot of my friends and family, because I knew that it wasn't healthy for me, but I didn't know I didn't know what to do. I was like, oh shoot, I got to be a whole new person. Old Shaena sucks, and we got to get rid of her. We got to change her completely. She has to have all new friends, all new hobbies. That's not that girl anymore. And I look back, and that's the one thing, is like, I wish I would have done it differently. I wish that I would have learned that, like, hey, this is a new slate, and you can slowly start to figure out what's good for you and what's not good for you. I took it like a very extremist type of like, okay guys, like, no more, like, I really did. I kind of went off the grid for a little bit. And I've slowly started to learn about myself. I've learned how to bring people into my life again that, like, because those were my friends, those were my family that I did love, but I just was showing up as a toxic person as for myself. But it was a positive slate. And now I'm learning that there's nothing wrong with old Shaena. She is good. She's here, actually. Like, she's sitting here. I've just learned that I was doing things that, like, didn't serve me, because I was identified with a little girl who grew up, like, with low self-esteem, or who was hurt, who was abused in some ways, who was neglected. And now I've learned that all those people that I surrounded myself with weren't bad. I wasn't bad. They weren't bad. It was just that, like, I'm learning now how to show up with these new relationships as myself. Mm-hmm. But I will say it's very difficult so for example, you didn't know old Shaena. But all the people who did know old Shaena, I'm sure it's difficult to meet me again and be like, wait, what the hell? You're not going to go get my dog at 3 a.m? You've never said no to me. Like, it's been, that part of it has been really hard for me, because it's not that I'm like brand new and I'm doing all these new things. It's just that like my values and my morals, I stand up for myself now.
You've grown.
I've grown up.
You've grown.
Yeah.
You've evolved.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I think about that stuff constantly. Like, I think about, who I was even like 3 years ago or 5 years ago, like, let alone like, I think all the time, and it doesn't really matter, but I think all the time, like, what do people I was around when I was like 20 years old think of me now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Are they like, oh, there's the Ross like that? Because like, I tried to never be like a bad person.
Sure.
But everybody does stupid things. Everybody acts dumb and I for sure, for a while, like, I think I was 50-50 on like really I was my own person. And then the other 50% was I will please everyone around me and I will do exactly what they do and say exactly what they say.
Yeah.
So again, like, it is identifying that, like, I identify all the time, like, genuinely, this might sound over exaggerated and silly, but like, I feel like every 6 months I'm different.
I love that. Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't mean that I'm changing courses and I'm like, I don't want to do video stuff anymore. I don't want to do a podcast. Like, I'm still doing all those things, but I'm learning to understand maybe those things or my life or just life in general or myself better.
Yeah.
To where it's like, just like you were saying, like, oh man, if I talk to somebody who remembers quote unquote old Shaena, I wonder what they'll think of me now of not going and getting their dog at 3 a.m. And I think about that of, again, like, friendships that I've even had in the last like 3 years, where I'm like, yeah, like I'm not even that same person. Maybe now I am going to be a little bit more confident than what I was then. And I will say like, hey, I actually don't want to do that thing. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, how will they perceive that now? Are they like, whoa, like, okay, dickhead, like, why do you got to be? Because I think that all the time, because I have gotten a lot more straightforward and a lot more honest and a lot more confident in what I do and do not want. And I'm not saying that's good or has to be accepted by anybody, but it's like, if you were like, hey, do you want to go get this food after here? I'm going to probably be like, not really. If it's a food that I don't want, if it's Chipotle, then I'm there. But, like, it is silly things like that to, again, relate to you in the way, we're like, I would go eat something that I didn't really want, but I would just say yes because I didn't want the confrontation. Like, I would do stuff like that all the time. Like, I'm not a partier, but I would go to parties with friends because they were like, this is what we're doing tonight. And I'm like, hell yeah, we are. Yeah. Like, and I'm like, I get there and I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like, absolutely. I don't even drink to enjoy this. So it's like, I couldn't even make myself enjoy it. Right. And so it's like, the point I'm making is, in my opinion, I think it's needed and a great thing to constantly evolve and change. Now, yes, if I'm sitting here today and I'm like, wow, Shaena, we're friends and I'm going to try and be a nice person and blah, blah, blah. And then maybe in a month, if I'm like, F you, Shaena, we're not friends, I don't care about anything, like, then that's maybe a drastic change that's a little weird. But to consistently learn new things about yourself, to me is like, and again, I'm getting like real high on like the soapbox here of preachiness, but like, I feel like that's what people should be doing all the time. Mm-hmm. I feel like there should never be a point where you're just like, you get here and you figure this out and you're like, that's that now. Yeah. That's it. I got it. I did this thing. I really like watching football and I'm going to work. It's like, okay, that's fine. You can like those things, but figure some new things out about yourself. Like, learn how to handle confrontation differently with the boss that you don't like, or learn how to mend a friendship in this way, or learn how to learn a new like, it doesn't have to be a skill or a hobby or a business or creative endeavor. It can be like how you communicate with other people. Again, like 5 years ago, whatever, I didn't like confrontation. So I was never an arguer ever, but I would never confidently handle that confrontation. I would dance around things. I would be like, oh yeah, I mean, like, that's cool, like, whatever, I mean, sure, and then just kind of like let it progressively get worse and never just be like, hey, let's solve this problem. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, and I think about that stuff all the time where, and you said, for people to re-meet you, like, I think about it and I'm like, there's so many people that I want to re-meet.
Yeah.
Like there really is.
Yeah.
Like whether it's past relationships or
Sure.
past friendships or anything, I'm like, I wish I could get the opportunity just to sit down with
Sure.
those people again and be like, okay, you're going to re-meet me now, because who you remember, I think, is pretty different than who is here now.
Sure.
Like, yes, I'm still Ross. There's still
Yes.
going to be things that are similar, but yeah, there's going to be differences. And I think I feel like that's supposed to happen.
Absolutely.
And I don't think a lot of people let themselves do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's incredibly important and awesome that you have figured that out, and that you are sitting here and saying, like, yes, there was an old Shaena, and yes, like, of course, it's always been you, but there's new levels
Yeah.
of you. Because I
Yeah.
feel like that's what we're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
I'm rambling.
No, you're not. That's what we're here for. I couldn't agree more. I think that, I don't know, I think what I used to think, and I wonder if other people, I think like I thought like, oh, if I show up today as someone who will do this for you, then tomorrow I have to be that. So it's kind of like, I think I obsessively thought about what other people thought of me, when in reality, people don't care about anyone but themselves. I mean, like, you can care, like deep down, like human nature, I feel like people are selfish, but I used to think that everyone thought about me like all the time. No one cared about me. You know what I mean? I mean, not in like a morbid way, but just like,
we've talked about that idea of, I'm pretty sure we have at least, of like the nobody cares idea.
Yeah.
Where it's like you can look at it one of two
Yes.
ways of like, for sure, it's easy to get caught up in the like, nobody cares. Like this podcast isn't huge. Nobody cares. But then at the same time, you can be like, nobody cares. So I get to just build it. I get to just do things and try and fail and start again. It's like, yeah, to some people, maybe that's not the most fun thing. Like, and I want everything I do just to be huge immediately.
Yeah.
But there is that balance of like, oh, nobody cares. So it's like, all the eyes aren't on me.
Yeah.
All these people aren't thinking about me all the time.
Yeah.
So cool. I can change and evolve and
nobody
fix
cares.
myself and do whatever. And it's like, hey, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, like if you care and how you care, that's what matters. I interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
No. And I think even with that, like with comedy as well, I think about it all the time. And I definitely have said this to you. It's the idea of like right now in my comedy career, right? I've been doing comedy for 2.5 years, and I'm this like small fish, like not a lot of people, know who I am. And I think right now it's the easiest it's ever going to be because nobody cares. But once you have fans or people constantly watching you, that's when it's like the stakes are higher, right? Like, not that that's going to suck or it's not going to be great, but like it's cool kind of when like, you're free to kind of make those changes. And that's why like even with comedy, I remember in the beginning I was like, oh, well, like I always talk about therapy and like I always talk about certain things, like I got to be that way. But then it's like, wait a second. No, like I can just go and change. But when you have more eyes on you, I think it's harder to like go and be like, oh, I'm not going to be that comedian anymore. Like now I'm this. I've changed my name so many times, like stand-up wise. It could be, not it could be. But
Yeah.
when I first started stand-up, I went by a different name. And then a couple weeks later, I went by a different name until I figured out like who I was. And even last weekend, I was like, I think I actually want to change my name again. But also really quickly, just to go back for a second, I don't know if this is so it's not that like I think that people re-meet me and then I think about how they perceive me now. Mm-hmm. It's that like I can only imagine that if I had a dog and I took my dog out every day at 8 p.m. and he knew that I took him out every day at 8 p.m. and all of a sudden I decided that 8 p.m. is dangerous, can't do that anymore, can't go out because it's not safe for me. I'm going to start letting him out at 12 p.m. I don't know, like 10 p.m., 2 hours later. I can only imagine that it's not fair to my dog, right? Because like he's used to going out at 8 p.m. He's going to pee in the house and I can't get mad at him for that because I understand that like I changed. And so I guess like what I meant by that was just like, especially like with really close relationships with like my dad, especially like I used to be I used to have different characteristics and I don't obsessively think about it. I don't think about how my dad perceives me. There's just like things that we run into and I'm like, oh, Shaena used to do that. And that's why he's expecting that from me. But now here I am. So I just mean that like I danced, we all dance in our relationships, right? Like you play a certain role in every relationship that you're in. And then when you change that on them, it's kind of like, whoa, like you got to give them a second, because they're not all going to be accepting of, even if you were to go back and do those relationships that you said like that you're a new Ross, all those relationships won't necessarily accept you as new Ross mm-hmm. because you may have played a certain role in that relationship.
Yep.
and they wouldn't want this around, or they would, whether it's their codependency or their like toxic behaviors or their unhealthy things, or even their healthy behaviors wouldn't mesh with your, it would just be different. But I don't blame them for it. And I understand. I also don't necessarily think about it because it's kind of like, this is me and you like it or you don't. Before it would have been like, wait, hey, do you like new Shaena though? Like if you don't, like, do you want me to change her? I can change. Like,
yeah. Okay. So going back to when you started to identify these things, did you, and I'm so sorry if you said this earlier, I have completely forgotten, but did you finish school for any of these things?
So I graduated from college.
Okay.
I finished med tech. Like I was going to go into med, like I was going to do pre-med. I finished my med tech program, and that's when I decided it's not for me. I went to college for psychology and criminal justice. I graduated. I applied for law school and then decided that so I didn't drop out of law school. I didn't get in. I didn't go and start it. And so I never even started technically, but I did have like criminal justice and psychology I studied for to go into law. And then when I became a doula, I finished my courses and everything. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess I would finish them. Like, I wasn't like, I was smart enough to do the things. So, but I just never continued, I guess, with them.
And so I guess my next question is like, what was the decision like when, you're doing these things, you're getting, certified and whatever, you're figuring all these things out. What is the decision like when you're officially like, hold on, no, I'm starting to learn a little bit more of who I am, and I'm doing some of these things to please other people. Like, what was the decision like for you to be like, I'm going to go try some other stuff? Like,
it was hard because I based my whole life on like other people's validation, that the first time that I had a decision for me, that dance, no one was used to it. Nobody. My dad was like, what? Like, it was hard. Honestly, the thought of it was harder than the actual like execution of it, because I was like, no, I let my whole family down. Like, I was going to be, this lawyer or this doctor, this doula. I was going to, like bring honor to my family. And now it's just going to be this like huge thing and everyone's going to hate me. And, my family took it really well. Like, everyone else was like, oh, that's great. I was like, I'm so sorry, you guys, but I don't want to do any of that anymore. The decision was really hard. It took a while for me to come to it. Like I said, I stopped talking to people. I took like 6 months of just figuring out who the hell I was, learning about my hobbies, eating foods that like I liked, making decisions for myself. And then I don't know, I told my dad. I was living with my dad at the time, and so I had to tell him like I was going to an open mic. I didn't have to probably, but I did. And I was really excited about it. But of course, here's Shaena again. Here's her new thing. People, I'm sure, are shocked to find out that I'm still doing it. I'm sure, I don't know, like maybe not my family, but just people who know me as like, I do a bunch of things. It was hard. It was hard. The mental suffering was more than the actual execution, which is usually how life goes. I feel like we suffer in our minds. In reality, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I answered your question, but it was totally hard. And then I did it, and then it was. And
so you were living with dad at the time, and is that in Ohio or is that in LA?
So I was in LA.
Okay. So how long were you in LA?
I lived there for like 4 years. I lived there for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah. 3.5.
So then when do you come back to Ohio?
Yeah.
Like, walk me through that.
So I was living with my dad in Los Angeles, and I had started comedy about a month before I left LA. So I did stand up there for a month before I had moved. I took a writing class. So after my second open mic, I took a writing class to learn how to write comedy, because I didn't know how. So I took a class in Las Vegas, and I was doing mics out there. And the thing about California is open mics cost money. You have to pay usually it's like $5 for like 3 to 5 minutes, or you have to like buy something from the bar. And then there's a lot of traffic in LA, and usually there's also like thousands of comedians out there. So I was doing it. I was going to open mics for about a month, and then I was at the time. So I was dating somebody. So like in that moment, I'm dating someone who lives far away. We're in like a long distance relationship, and I came out to visit him. Actually, okay, my mom. This is like, so my stories are always very complicated. Thank you for still being here. My mom was having back surgery, so I went to go take care of her. take care of her. That was my role in the life, right? Whatever role I was playing, like, hey mom, I'm going to put literally my life on hold over here in California, which wasn't much, whatever. She was having surgery. I was going to come work for her actually in her job. And while she went and had surgery. And so it was fine though. Like I was good with it. I was dating someone who lived in Columbus. So I was in Toledo, which is where my mom lived. And going to back to my childhood home, I was like 4 months into learning about myself. And I thought all that like stuff that my mom used to do was in the past. I was like, oh yeah, she used to be kind of like not the greatest parent and she used to do this stuff. Being at home, I realized that's still the same mom. Still doing the same thing to me. I'm just aware of it now. And it hurt so bad I felt it, Before it was like, oh, whatever, she's doing these things and it doesn't really matter. But when you're aware of it, it is like a different level of like, I couldn't believe, I felt bad for little Shaena. I was like, oh my God, like this is what I used to go through. And it was so bad. I honestly cried for like, I was there for 3 weeks every single day. I like cried and cried and cried. And I was like, I can't, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I hate this so much. And I had to leave. And I didn't leave in the best way. I left very abruptly. I wish I would have done things a little differently. I remember I kind of told my mom, but I didn't articulate it well. I wasn't like, I was just like, like to this day, I don't know that my mom necessarily knows when I left that moment, like why I wasn't able to speak very well about why. And so I had a boyfriend at the time. Yeah, my boyfriend lives in Columbus, and so I moved to Columbus because he was close by. I had to leave, and I was like, hey, can you come pick me up? And I lived with him for like a year, and I just moved in. It was not like people in LA thought I was coming back. I moved for a little while just to take care of my mom. But so first I went to go visit him just for 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back home after 2 weeks. Like I'll be here for a little while. And I did more open mics in Columbus, Ohio in 2 weeks than I did in 1 month in California. Because in Columbus, there's multiple mics a night. It's free. Parking is usually free. If not, it's pretty inexpensive, very easy to find. There's not as many comedians. There's maybe like 50 to 75, maybe 100. I don't know, but not thousands. And I was getting booked on shows very quickly. And I was like, oh, okay. This is where I need to be. Like, this is easier. It's easy, not easier, but I wanted to hone my craft. I wanted to become as good as I possibly can. And I felt like Columbus was better for me to become like well known, like in the industry, like in my little like local scene, to get to know people, to like become this new comedian. I didn't want my first impression to be in front of like people in California. And if you ask anyone here in Columbus, I mean, like when I first started, I was not good. I don't think anyone, would be good when they first start.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. And I'm just glad that wasn't like everyone's first, like, not that Columbus matters less, but here it's local comics who know that about me versus like, bookers, or I don't know. I feel like whatever your first impression of someone is in the scene, it'll stick with them. So one day, like when I go back to LA, at least people, it's like their first time seeing me or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think in a place like this, because I think about this with like the filmmaking world all the time, because I've had the conversation so many times with people where I'm like, sometimes it's hard, and I will be completely transparent. Like I work with a lot of awesome people on the crews that I get to work with and all that sort of stuff, but at the same time with my, I'm not just the video guy. Like we've had this conversation. Like I'm not a video guy. I'm much more than that. It's not just about, I do these different things. It's the vision is up here. It's and video is a tool that I create with sometimes.
Yeah.
Finding other people to help build that vision in the right ways is very hard. So when I'm having those conversations a lot, everyone's go-to is, you sound like you should be in LA.
Oh, yeah.
You should dude, you should just be in Hollywood. It's because you're here in Ohio.
Yeah.
You're not going to find the people. And like, maybe there's truth to that I don't know. Maybe they're totally right. But I think the difference between a place like this or anywhere else compared to your LA, your Hollywood, whatever, is like, I think places like this allow more authentic creation or authentic work on oneself or community even, right? And I'm not saying that doesn't exist out there.
Of course.
But it's just a different monster. Because like the answer that I give everyone, they're like, dude, you need to go out and be a filmmaker in LA. Then it would totally work for you. Sure. I'm like, no. That would honestly set me back probably 5 years.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Because going out there, I'm not going to get the same clients I get here. I'm not going to get the same amount. I'm not going to have the same amount of work. And even outside of the work part, the passion part, sure, I could probably go find 20 people that want to come work on my movie set. But guess what? There's also 10,000 more movie sets that day, all clamoring for the same people.
Yes.
So, those people that I meet, are they really interested in my film set? Or are they just trying to get more stuff on their resume so then they can get on the bigger film sets? That's where my head goes in a lot of that of like, will I enter a solid community? Of course, I'd find friends, I'm sure. Yes, I'd find a community. But I think that's the difference between a big place like LA with any sort of endeavor, whether it's comedy, filmmaking, anything, compared to a place like Columbus or whatever it may be. It's not that it's worse here or it's bad, but it's like, I think when you go back to the nobody cares comment, it's like nobody cares here in a different way. Yeah. And it's kind of like everybody's not caring together, you know, because everyone's like, yeah, I just bombed my set the other night too.
Yeah, and no one saw.
And no one
that
saw.
Matters.
So here's what I learned, and here's maybe, hey, do you want to talk about it? And cool, I'll come to your next set and blah, blah, blah. Where here it's like, I tell somebody like, I get in my own head and I'm like, all I shoot right now are short films. I haven't made one feature film. I'm a failure. But then I tell somebody, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this short film. Like, it's probably going to be 5 minutes. If you want to come help on it, you don't have to. But, like, I know that's probably not interesting. Most of the time, people are like, dude, please. I would love to do that. Because that's also helping them grow and helping them be a part of something. Where if I went to LA next week and was like, I'm going to live here now, can you find a way to make anything work?
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not saying anybody moving out there is making a bad decision. I'm not saying that.
No.
But I know I'm not going to go out and get to really be doing the exact same things I'm doing now because I need to build a new team. I need to build a new crew, which then brings building new relationships and trust and friendships and aligning creatively. And if I want to work in the industry, I'm probably going to have to go out and be
a production assistant.
On a set where I'm sitting and I'm like, no, I totally know how to direct.
Exactly.
Yeah, dude, you and everybody else that just gave this director their script today.
Yep.
So it's like, it's the big fish in a small pond, small fish in a big pond sort of thing. You know what I mean? It's like, if I went out there, I'm a small fish in a very, very big pond overflowing with a bunch of other small fish.
Yes.
I'm not saying I'm a big fish here.
Right.
But I think it's easier to be like whatever size fish I am in a moderately sized pond where everybody else is also like, yeah, no, I think, and I'm not saying there's no competition anywhere, but like, I think most of these fish are also like, yeah, let's make room in the pond. Yeah, do you want to do okay, cool. Yeah, let's swim over here. Like I'll show you. Like there's a little bit more of a community. Yeah. And like I'm assuming at least that's what I'm kind of getting a little bit from your story of comedy, where it's like you're not saying it was bad in LA, but there's a difference in what you can try out and formulate here and get more practice here or whatever. So then it's more exciting when you do go out to LA. Yeah. Like when that moment takes you back out there, it's going to be exciting rather than like, okay, yeah, can I get on this open mic tonight? And are these comedians going to care about me and whatever? We're in the same way, we're like, I'll be excited to go work in LA on a movie when it's taking me there. Yes. Because then I know I have a real purpose to be there. Yes. I know I'm like, oh no, I'm out here to film this movie. Yeah, no, I'm out here to do this. Or like, yeah, I got brought out here to co-direct this. Like, there's a reason for me being here. Yeah. It's not, I'm going to dive in the deep end and we're just going to see if I could sink or swim, bro. And it's like, no, like, I don't think I have to do that. And again, I feel like I'm rambling. No. But I don't know. I do feel like those are kind of the compare and contrast of a place like LA and a place like Columbus. I do think you can find more authentic connections because not everybody's trying to be a star that you run into. Like, even if they really want to be a star, there's a good chance that here you're going to be able to actually like talk to them about that sort of thing and learn from each other. And we're out there, it's like you probably don't know who it's like, oh, this person wants to get coffee with me. but do they want something from me? Like, and again, I'm speaking out of like, I haven't lived there. I don't know. I've visited, you know, I've seen, you know, I've experienced, but so I could be way off. And I'm not saying that nobody authentic lives in places like that. Like they for sure do. But I do think it would be a different level of difficulty.
Yeah. I don't think you could have said that any better. I mean, I think absolutely. I also love that you said authentic connection here. If I could sum up my experience in Columbus, I feel every connection that I've made is authentic. I mean, sure, there's some, connections that I don't necessarily need to continue watering or whatever that I don't, I don't know. There's some connections that I feel I've gained some true authentic friends in the comedy scene, people who have helped me so much, people who have given me a chance, people who, or I would consider a friend, where in Los Angeles, you're right. A lot of the people are people, I mean, I love LA, I have family out there who were genuinely born and raised out there who I think are great. But in the industry, most people in the industry, a lot of people in the industry were too good for their own hometown, right? So they're all the people who are I need to go somewhere to and every person you make is trying to make it. And that's great, more power to them. I think it's amazing. I have friends out there who are these people and who are still great people. But when there's so many, it's hard to weed out, who's the good ones here? And am I going to get hurt out here? Is someone going to take advantage of me here? Is there someone who wants something from me here? And here, you don't have to ask so many questions because you're right. They're literally hey, we'll make room for you. Come swim. In California, it feels more like we don't have room for anyone. No more, please no more, because we're all competition. We're here, yeah, we're technically we're competing with each other here, but people feel more like they're okay with you being here and they're okay with you being competition because someone does have to win. We can all, I don't know, I'm not competitive at all, which is not great. I think we've had this discussion, but in this industry, you almost have, people are so competitive. But in Columbus, it feels like there's some people who are hey, even though we are in competition with each other, I want to see you do well, and let's do well together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's can I, even though, yes, it's oh man, if you become a star, then I might feel bad about me not becoming a star. But if I helped you in some way become that star, then I'm still going to be stoked for you. I'm still going to be excited. And again, there's stories for both sides from everywhere, right?
Sure.
It's not exclusively one way in LA. It's not exclusively one way here.
No, not at all.
I've surely encountered crappy people here.
Absolutely.
It's everywhere. It doesn't matter. That's just people. And
I've encountered good people out there. I have friends out there still in the stand-up community that I love and I think are so great, and I can't wait to one day be able to go back out there and really connect with them. But wherever you go, you're going to run into that.
Yes. And I think it comes down to knowing who you are and what you want. Because it's you can accept certain challenges. It's I know for me, the challenges that I want aren't to go out and be in a super oversaturated market where everybody else is the next coolest director too.
Yes.
I know what sort of challenges I want and what sort of levels I want to level up to before I attempt any of that sort of stuff. You know what I mean? I'm not going to take my first short film and be time to enter in festivals. Sure, maybe there's some reason that I should be doing that, but I'm going to wait until I feel confident in that. Yeah. And sometimes waiting is bad, but you'll know when the time is right.
Absolutely.
Is basically what I'm saying. You know what I mean? You'll know. It's you're not going to sit down with me and be so it's time to film my first Netflix comedy special. We're going to film it and I'm going to give it to Netflix.
Exactly.
Would I be excited in hearing that? I'd be dude,
yes,
totally. Let's figure that out. But at the same time, it's not that I have to do this so I look cool and I'm a badass. It's I want to hone in on my skills. I want to refine who I am. I want to continue to refine my set. I want to try new and different things while nobody cares. Because then it's I've already thought about this so much and it's just really just dreaming about a cool life. But I've already thought about what does it look like, when I make a horror movie that everybody loves and then I make one that everyone's that's not his style. Oh my God, that sucks. Because then I have to be oh, my art is now for somebody else, in a way. Yeah. So then you have to battle with and it's not that you have no connection to it, but I'll know that oh man, I was really connected to this movie that maybe these people didn't like. So now that's a new challenge and a new battle that I have to deal with. Where right now, if I don't like a short film, nobody knows because nobody cares. Would I love more than 20 views on Instagram? Sure. I sure would. But at the same time, it's I look at pretty much every short film that I've shot so far, I'm like, no, that was wrong. That should have been better. This should have changed. That sucks. So it's kind of good that it's like, oh,
you have a chance to
right.
get better. Yeah.
Yes, I can learn for next time. And I would assume it's similar with comedy sets.
Absolutely.
Or, yes, of course, you're getting immediate feedback. Right?
Yeah, that's what I'm surprised. I wonder. I didn't think about that with your industry, with the same industry, with your craft. I didn't think about that. Like, I look at my sets from 6 months ago. I look at my sets from last week. And I'm like, oh man, like, why do I always do that when I go on stage? Okay, I'm gonna get better. I didn't think about the fact that your editing skills get better, your producing skills get better, your directing gets better. I never thought about, like, duh, of course, when you first start out, you're not that great. But I didn't think about that. You wouldn't want your first thing you ever edited to go to, like,
No,
Yeah.
and I'm sure some people do it and it's totally fine. But like,
which is fine.
For me,
Yes.
I'm not trying to, again, dive in the deep end of just like, I just got to make something so it impresses somebody somewhere. It's like, yes, would I love a Netflix movie deal tomorrow? I sure would. But I'm also like, am I ready for that though? I have yet to write a feature-length script. So if I did get a Netflix deal tomorrow, now I've got this huge stress of like, you got to learn how to write a feature-length script, not just an overview in the notes of your phone. You know what I mean? Like, not just the 5-minute short. Like,
Yes.
So again, those are welcome challenges for sure. If there's any Netflix execs watching or listening to this, please hit your boy up. Like, I've got some ideas. But the point I'm making is like, even though those things.
Do Netflix executives watch this? Because
I hope. I don't know,
Okay.
do you know any? Listen,
Shoot.
you're from LA. I'm not. So you must know one. But yes, those would be absolutely welcome. That would be awesome. But then I'm aware of the work that comes with that.
Yes.
Right? And then it even becomes like, I'm also aware that if and when the time comes when I'm making some awesome movie that is getting funded and theatrical release and all this sort of stuff, I don't know how much control I have over it.
Sure.
I don't.
Didn't even think about that.
Because what if the lead production house or whoever's, putting it out, what if they don't like some scenes that I really love?
Yeah.
Well, then they probably get to make that choice.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not Steven Spielberg. I'm not J.J. Abrams. I'm not one of these big movie directors who probably have a good amount of control over their things at this point. I'm not that. So then it becomes that battle of like, I'm so excited for those opportunities to come and I want them so bad. But I also then have to get myself at a new level of understanding and a new level of conflict resolution. And I have to learn all these skills again to then like, well, how would I respond to a big Netflix executive emailing me and saying, we don't like the story like this, so rewrite it.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's when it becomes hard. Right now, I can just be angry at my own short film.
Sure.
I can just sit and be like, that was so stupid, that sucks.
Sure.
Nobody cares. So that's
Nobody cares.
the good and bad.
Yeah.
I want more than 20 people on Instagram to care about it really badly. But you got to get ready for those new challenges of like, literally even like small things. Like I used TikTok for like a week.
You did?
Yeah. And I posted like clips from some projects, right? And like, TikTok naturally will get more views and stuff like that than Instagram because Instagram's a dumpster. But, it's like I got all these views and I was like, whoa, this is so cool. But then like comments from random started rolling in where they're like, this was dumb. And then my heart just breaks and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's kind of a good example. It's like, it's a very minuscule example, but it was like, right now with my short films, the 20 friends who watch it are probably going to have a good understanding of like how I am, what story I was trying to tell. They're going to read my 19 paragraph caption.
Yeah.
So I still get to connect with them.
Yeah.
The randoms that are eventually going to watch a movie or see that thing on TikTok that they don't care about, they're the ones that are going to be like, this was so dumb. F you, you effing idiot. Like, so then it's like, oh man, that's a whole new battle. And that's why like, even though making fun of bad movies is fun. I used to do a podcast about it, right? But, and I can do my fair share of like, this movie was so dumb and here's why. But I'm also like trying to catch myself because I'm also like, well, how much control did those people have or not have over it? Sometimes I think you can tell of like, okay, they purposely decided this and that's a stupid decision. But I'm also like, but am I that random person on TikTok? Like, my opinion doesn't matter that much.
Sure.
I can have that opinion for sure. And I can be like, that movie should have been like this. but it isn't. And that's just sort of that. You know what I mean? So I'm always like trying to catch myself of, in the same way that if you watched a comedian bomb,
Sure.
and let's just say it's not a comedian you know. Let's say it's somebody who's like maybe has some fame behind them, so there's not a personal connection there. If you watch it and you might think that their jokes or their style of comedy, maybe it's not good. You're like, that joke kind of sucked. I mean, like people laughed, like whatever. Like if you had that thought, you'd probably catch yourself because you know what it's like to get up there and tell a joke.
Yeah.
So you're like, I didn't think that was cool or funny or whatever, and it's kind of weird, and they handle themselves weird. But you know what? Yeah, no, that's just them.
Yeah.
They're doing it. You know what I mean? They're doing their thing, and I'm going to kind of catch myself and be like, oh, well, there was a lot of work that went in to them getting to that point. So it's like, even with movies, I try and catch myself where I'm like, listen, I might think this movie is trash, but a bunch of people worked on it and made it. So like they still did that.
Yeah.
They at least made
it.
You know, I'm still making 3-minute short films. So how much room do I have to really talk?
I think what's so fun. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was literally just going to say I'm rambling.
No, you're not. No, I think what's crazy is, yes, you're so right. And I'm sure that when you watch movies, like, of course you have a different eye, right? Like now when I watch stand-up comedy, I'm looking at it very differently. I'm looking at the mechanics and the joke structure and the way they are on stage, not just overall, like how they're laughing. I mean, how they're doing. But I do this in my everyday life. But it's interesting that you said you'll catch yourself when you're like, oh, that movie sucked. Because you're like, oh, wait, like, well, I respect them enough for even making this, for having this, because they're further along than I am, or they're in the same boat as me. But I'm sure in the back of your head, you're like, I could have done that better. But you also recognize that, like, where they're at. And I think I also, you can probably ask most people, I'm not one to ever, I think everyone's funny. I think everyone does a good job because they did it. You know, like, so something that I used to do in my old Shaena life was I would judge everyone, every single thing. I judged everyone. I wanted to talk about people all the time. I wanted to judge them. And so I catch it in my everyday life. When I catch myself judging someone, I'll stop and be like, there's no reason for that. Wait, why are you doing that? Why are you judging them? Whatever. Same thing goes for stand-up. When I see someone do a set, I don't judge them based on like, oh, I think they did a good job or they didn't do a good job, because to me that's not beneficial. It doesn't help anything. It doesn't do anything. But I totally, yes, like I look at it with a very critical eye. It's very different, but I respect any person now who stands on that stage. Whereas your average audience is looking at a person doing stand-up and judging the hell out of them. When they've never done it. They would never do it. They could never do it. Some of them might be able to, you know, but it's funny how like it's the people who do it recognize and respect them on another level, because it's hard to make movies. It's hard to produce a movie, to write a movie. It's hard to get on stage. It's hard to put your work out there. It's hard, you know, like hard might not be the word, but like it is like it's. Yeah. And I think, like look at people differently. Although I know a lot of comedians who absolutely will probably talk, you know, judge other comedians and stuff. That's not necessarily something that I love to do, but I just have a lot of respect for anyone who does anything in this industry or anything. I mean, at all. But
right. And I'm sure
takes courage.
That just comes down also to just people.
Yeah, in general.
There are definitely. I'm sure there are comedians who will look at other comedians and be like, fucking look at them, idiot. Like, they thought that joke was funny. Yes. Like, and then they'll keep doing it. And you're like, why are you doing that?
Yes.
You know, in the same way that I've met people with terrible attitudes, you know, in the filmmaking world, where they're like, oh, this person doesn't have this type of gear. They don't make this amount of money. And I'm just like, dude, okay, like, is that really what you're worried about right now? Like, you know, so again, that just kind of comes down to people are people, and there are different people everywhere. So there's going to be those judgmental people. There's going to be the people who are like, yes, come swim with us. And let's you know, let's swim together. Yeah. So I'm gonna try and get it, because I'm just gonna keep rambling on this subject over and over. But like when you are like officially getting like deeper into comedy, like, oh, there's a fly or something flying around, a little gnat. It just wanted a cameo in the podcast apparently. I'm surprised I didn't fly in my mouth. It would have been funny if it flew in my mouth, honestly. And I'm just like, oh, sorry. Anyway. But like during that time frame, what were like relationships like at that point in time? Because where we left off was you were living with someone in Columbus
Yeah.
and you're starting this comedy career and you're identifying these new things about yourself and you're like, how does all that like sort of mesh together?
Yeah, it was definitely okay. So any relationship that I had, when I first started this whole journey, it was definitely hard because with anyone, with intimate relationship as well as like with my dad, with my siblings. So yeah, it was definitely difficult to navigate relationships in that sense of, because like I said, I'm going through all this new stuff and I'm learning all this new stuff about me. And also, especially with intimate relationships, I only ever knew dysfunctional. With anything, actually, friendships, like I only ever knew dysfunction. So learning how to have a relationship with anyone, absolutely, it was really hard. Also, I'm learning that stand-up energetically, it takes a lot of energy. And so every person that's in my life right now knows, and I think we had this conversation, like my friends and family, anyone that comes into my life, I think, at least I make it very clear, that stand-up is what's really, really important to me. I don't want to say that it comes first. It does come first. But like, obviously, there's moments where like, it doesn't have to, I'm healthy. I have a healthy relationship with stand-up, which I'm learning how to have a healthy relationship with anyone. Mm-hmm. I'm learning how to, first and foremost, how to have a healthy relationship with myself. I'm learning how to not be an extremist about things. Like, I don't need to be obsessed with stand-up and do stand-up 24 times a day. Like, I do a lot of stand-up, but it's not it's not obsessive, where I used to be very obsessive about things. Relationships, like I wanted to be like obsessed with that person, and like, friendships, oh my God, I want you to love me and like be the best friend ever. And now I'm learning how to have like healthy relationships. But at the very beginning of me learning all of this, it was hard. And I honestly didn't, even though I was living with like my boyfriend and everything like that, I still didn't know how to have a healthy relationship. I was very unhealthy. But I don't know, I'm learning how, and all my relationships are getting better. Like not like all my intimate relationships. That sounds like I have like multiple boyfriends.
Okay, well,
like,
hopefully they're all watching. Get at least some more views and listens on the show.
Shoot,
here.
They weren't all supposed to know. No,
great.
like
how many
just,
are there? 5, 6, 7. I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to subscribe and like and follow.
No, all my relationships, like family, friends, anything intimate, any kind of relationship. I'm learning how to have a healthy relationship, and it's been a learning curve. But luckily, because I like moved to this new city, I got to practice. I got to learn how to like show up as myself. I got to learn how to make new friends. And like, so with my boyfriend, it was weird because he started dating me
yeah, and not to interrupt you, but like that's even why I asked.
Yeah.
Is because like these other people are seeing you go through this change, which I'm sure in some ways, depending on who it is and all sort of, can bring even a larger challenge, because it's like you have your inner challenge of, I'm changing me, I'm growing. Mm-hmm. And with that comes different ways that you act or live life. Or like you said, there's things that your dad would expect, quote unquote, old Shaena to do that new Shaena does not do. So again, that's even why I asked like how this all meshed together, because that's a whole other thing to balance.
Yeah.
Or these sort of things of, okay, like these people who are with me through the change, not just person that I met on either side.
Right.
What is it like? Yeah, when you're going through like the growth phase, basically.
And I think it goes back to what we were saying just about this new dance. I think it's people like getting to know me. And what I will say though is like, I'm healthier now. So like, it's not, if I like changed and started doing all these like unhealthy things, I think it would be harder. But like, I don't know, like you can't like, so I mean, I guess no, because like for those people it's hard because I'm not doing that same dance. But what I will say, like in my intimate relationships, like the way it showed up, relationships, I still like plural, but like one, but like I just like to speak like so that it can be said across the board. Like at the beginning, I remember like my specific with my boyfriend, it was very I was unhealthy, I was like jealous and obsessed, and like I would like not communicate well. I didn't know how to communicate my feelings, and I wanted to change him and I wanted to control him. Yeah, so anyway, what I've learned though is like, can you imagine if you were in a relationship with someone, right? And they were like controlling you and they were trying to tell you what to do and they were really jealous and really aggressive, but then all of a sudden they started like trusting you, and they started letting you do whatever you wanted, and they started learning how to communicate their feelings, and they started not trying to control you, and they started trying to like let you just be yourself in an intimate relationship, it's probably much better for the boyfriend on the other side, you know? Like, whereas like with like a friend, it's probably different because like, but in that case, I think that me becoming healthier was only good for my relationship. Like, I don't think in that moment it was hard. It wasn't hard for him. Like, he saw it all, you know? The one thing I will say though is like, one thing I wanted to be really careful about is like, I didn't want to like badmouth my family. I didn't want to badmouth my friends. And so like my boyfriend was very supportive in the sense of like, he wasn't sitting there like he just let me do my own thing. I wasn't like, oh, my mom sucks. Like I was bullied by my siblings. Like he just kind of like, he let me do my own thing and just sort of like, he saw what he saw, and I never wanted to skew anyone's opinion. Even other people who like came up to me and were like, what's going on? Like, I never wanted to be like, my mom was really mean to me. Like, I don't want to change anyone's opinion, whoever they have. Like, I can speak from experience. Sure, I can tell people about my own experience, but I don't know if I'm rambling now. I don't know where I started, but yeah. just like with an intimate relationship, it got better. It was cooler. I became this like healthier person, and it was great. With friendships, it was different because it was kind of like, wait a second, like, you know, Shaena's changing, but I want you to go like do this stuff for me, and you won't do it anymore. And some friendships have fallen off. Like some friendships didn't want this new version of me, and I didn't dance well with their whatever it was. But yeah, so with some it's been challenging, and some it's been really, really easy. But I will say the people who have stuck around, I feel an immense feeling of like they actually genuinely care about me, and not just what I was giving them and not what I could do for them. Mm-hmm. They just cared about me, and that's a cool thing. It's cool to go through a change and see who's still there. Yeah. That's been fun.
Well, I think it's the classic like cliche thing of like, in order to love somebody else first, you have to love yourself, right? You have to understand who you are and how that plays into these different relationships with people and friendships and all this sort of thing. Like, you have to understand who you are mm-hmm. first. And I think we've talked about this a little bit recently. Like, that's, I feel like, the phase that I've been in for a couple of years, where it was like the last big relationship that I was in. I had no idea who I was. Yeah. You know what I mean? I wasn't confident in anything. I wasn't sure about anything. I didn't know how to communicate properly. You know what I mean? So it was just this mess of a person who was just like, oh yeah, like having a girlfriend's really cool. Like, you know, that's all it was. Where it's like, I feel like I personally for a couple of years, like halted, you know, having a girlfriend or anything. Cause I was like, I identified, I'm like, I need to just like wait it out. And like, yeah, sure. It's like, oh, well, I'm busy. And it's like, yeah, that's totally a part of it. But sure. It's also that part of like, well, I need to know that I'm in a place where I'm ready to make time for these things, or ready to give the proper amount of energy, because as I'm sure you have, like you experience examples of maybe what you don't want a relationship to be. Yeah. So then you're going to carry that with you forward of like, okay, I want to make sure that I don't experience that again, and I'm going to make sure that I don't give that experience to anybody else, right? So it is that like making sure that you're ready, you know. And there's been times like over the last couple of years, like full transparency, like there's been times where I felt bad because like there is a girl that you know, it's like, oh man, we would be great together. Wow. Sure. But I also identified at that time, I don't think I'm actually ready to do this. So I'm not just going to, for me at least, it can work differently for anybody. Yeah, but for me, it's like, I don't want to just dive in and just kind of see what happens, because then it's not the experience that I want to provide. It's not the relationship that I want to have. So it's like, cool, I'm going to make sure I continue to do work on myself first. So then I know when that time comes, cool, now I feel confident. Yeah. And it's like, in a weird way,
like it's
the same thing with the Hollywood thing. Like, I could run out there and be like, I'm just gonna be a filmmaker in LA, and haha, it's sick. Or I can just continue to grow and form who I am and who I want to be, and then the right things will attract to that.
But then how cool will it be when you're ready for that next relationship? Like, you're going to show up as this like confident, whatever, like, you know, whatever, like for that person. And I think it's the coolest thing you can do is like, society, I feel like, thinks that like working on yourself has been labeled as almost like selfish. I think that was definitely a problem that I had within my family. Like, I know that like me taking all this time to figure out my life was very like selfish, and we're taught like, don't do that, we don't do that. But I think it's the most selfless thing you can do is like work on you, so that when you find that person, you're ready for them. You're going to show up and you're going to be great, and you're going to have a healthy relationship. And like, you know what, if it doesn't work out, whatever, but like at least you're giving them an experience with an authentic person who isn't just going to hurt them, or who isn't just going to be toxic, or whatever, you know, like your case may be. But I think it's the coolest thing ever that you can do for someone, because if you're not ready, you're not going to be great to that person. You're going to, you know, carry your own baggage into it. And that's not an adult relationship. You know, that's a...
Yes, and I think that's a whole other podcast topic, honestly,
Sure.
of like what a real relationship maybe is compared to like the past one. Like, I honestly, as silly as this might sound, sitting here as a 28-year-old person, I don't think I've ever had a real relationship.
Wow.
Because it's like I look back at like cool high school relationship,
Sure.
and then like a relationship in like my early 20s who was like a complete that's old Ross, right? That's a completely different person. Then a relationship in like my mid 20s, right? Completely different person.
Sure.
But since then it's been like, that's when I put kind of the brakes on of like, I don't know. Should I might try that. I don't really know. I'm going to figure out who I am first.
Yeah.
So it's like, I feel like this version of Ross has never been in a relationship.
I love
as strange
it's
as
a
that
new
is
slate.
to say. Yes.
Yeah, you get to show up as this new, and you get to figure out what you like and what you don't like. You know, you get to figure out how you want to show up, and you get to start over like a new slate.
Right. Of not just sitting and be like, oh, well, this is what relationships were. This is what they're supposed to be. It's like, I can sit and be like, well, for the last 3 years or whatever, like I've been busy enough that I could hang out with a girlfriend 2 hours for one day a week. I don't think I want that. And that's not fair to her. And that's not a good relationship. So it's like, I'll wait until the life is a little bit, you know, structured in a way that's like, no, I can make time for these things. I can make this work. I can give that person the energy or the experience or whatever that I want to give them or that they deserve, rather than just like, hey, yeah, cool. Like, I need a girlfriend real bad. Like, yeah, let's just go ahead and date ASAP. Sure. I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, I don't know. It could be terrible. I'll see you in 2 weeks though. Like, sorry, I'm really busy. You don't care about my career. Like, then it becomes that whole thing of like, you don't care about me. It's like, well, I don't know how to care about you. You kind of have to help me know how to, you know what I mean? Like, what do you like? What do you not like?
And I will say it's a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say the word sacrifice, but I will. Like, I think that when you're in a relationship, no matter how committed you are to your career, like, career can come first, and that's fine. Like I've told you, any person entering my life, like, stand-up comes first. And like, if I have to go on a vacation or a trip or to go on the road, like, you have to understand that. But also, you have to make time for that relationship. Like, you have to, or else that it's not going to grow. It's not. And even if you love your career so much, you do have to make time. And that person is not supportive by just letting you go out and never see them. What they're doing, like, that you do have to, it is a little bit of a sacrifice, because there is a little bit of like, there's happiness that comes from making that sacrifice. Something that I've been doing recently is, I think, and I don't know like where you stand as far as like if entering a relationship seems like uncomfortable, or if it's something that you're not quite ready for. Like, when I was scared of something, I would avoid it. If anything seemed uncomfortable, I want nothing to do with it. Like, that was just for some reason that's how I lived my life, was avoidance. And recently what I've learned is if something seems scary, I want to do it more. I want to jump right into it. Confrontation, commitment, whatever it was that was scary to me, I want to do it. And I think it's because I'm learning that like usually what we're avoiding, there's happiness on the other side of it. There's something major or some kind of growth on the other side. It's the growth. Yes. Which is uncomfortable, you know. Yep.
It's 100%. That's I don't think growth comes without a challenge.
Yes.
And that's why it's like I can sit here now and be like, okay, I'm interested to see when new Ross gets in a relationship.
Sure.
Like, what's he
gonna do?
Like, what is that like? What kind of boyfriend is he gonna be? Yeah, like literally, like, what is that like?
Would you want to date new Ross?
I never thought about it that way before. I don't know. I think, yeah.
Because like you were saying before, I mean, I know it's the most cliche thing ever, but I just learned it like 8 months ago. you really, really cannot love someone else until you love yourself. And I know that sounds so cheesy, but until I implemented it, until I genuinely learned it for myself, I realized, oh my gosh, duh. Like, oh, and if you don't want, you have to love yourself. You got to date yourself, and if you don't want to be your friend, why would anyone want to be your friend?
Yeah, well, it's like there's a quote that I heard. I don't even know what context it was in, but it's always stuck with me of like, who are you when no one else is around?
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
And like, I feel like I remind myself of that a lot, where I'm like, who am I if Instagram doesn't exist?
Wow.
Who am I if the internet doesn't exist? Like,
Sure.
that is literally, and I guess I've spoiled it, and I guess I don't even know if I was going to ask it on the show, but like, that's actually a question I want to start asking people towards like the end of these episodes, is just be like, hey, like, whether you use the internet a bunch or not, like, who would you be if the internet didn't exist? Like, how would you be pursuing your path without the notion of like, I need to make content, I need to show up on social media, I need to post a selfie, I need to, whatever. Like, because I know that if podcasts weren't a thing, I would still like having these conversations anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, first time you and I met up, we sat in a Panera for 4 hours, 5 hours. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd still be having these types of conversations. So I can confidently say I would still be doing something like this without sharing it with, whoever's watching. Right? You know what I mean? Like, and so that I think translates into the relationship thing of like, are you happy? And it doesn't have to be 100% happy, right? But I think somewhere up there, right? Are you in any way happy with who you are when no one else is around, when you're not trying to make other people happy by conforming to what you think they want, or making them laugh, or, because I'm sure like there's plenty of sad stories of, comedians being like, I'm happy when I'm making people laugh on stage. And then when I get off stage, I'm not, and that's kind of a whole other topic than what we're talking about right now, but it all kind of feeds into that same thing. Like, who are you when you strip away these certain things? If I wasn't making these short films that, I want people to see, would I still like storytelling? Yes. It's like, I know at my foundation, my core, like who I am and what I like to be doing. So yes, if the internet wasn't there, like, would I be doing these things, right? Would anybody be doing these certain things that they're doing? And it doesn't make them bad or good.
Sure.
It's just like an interesting thought of like, well, what would you do if it wasn't around? And in the same way, who are you when no one else is in the room? Are you the person that's going out of their way to crack jokes? Because I know people personally who are like a different type of person when people are around.
Yeah.
They're overly sarcastic. They want to crack jokes all the time. But then when you sit down with them one-on-one, they want to have this conversation. You know what I mean? They're not owning really who they are, at least in my opinion, right? It's not like, because and I've been having this conversation with tons of people recently, but like, I feel like over the last year, I've owned a new level of who I am, where it's like, listen, if people get annoyed that I'm that friend who always wants to have the deep conversation, I guess you're just going to get annoyed. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, like, yes, we can laugh and we can joke, and know as well as I do at this point, like, I love stupid, vulgar, dumb jokes. Like, I'm there for it. I love it. Mm-hmm. But instead of sitting and looking at memes for 6 hours, what if we just actually talked some more?
Yeah.
Like, what if, talk about anything. It doesn't matter. Like, but let's like actually communicate, right? And I feel like that's a new facet of who I am that I've owned, and just been like, where in the past, I feel like I would try and hide it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh no, I need to get in stupid mode to hang out with these people or this person. And it's not that they're stupid, but it's just, they don't want to talk about things. They want to just crack jokes and riff on each other, whatever it is. Where now I'm like, no, I'm just going to be who I want to be. I'm not going to be somebody for that moment. Right. Which I feel like is a lot of the change that you've realized, like, you know what I mean? Over the years.
I love that question. I think you should absolutely. You're going to start
asking. Should I start asking that?
I think that's great, because
while you ponder on this, I'm gonna plug something in over here real quick.
Okay.
So you are now the host of this podcast.
Oh shoot. Okay.
So how are you doing hosting this podcast?
Oh my gosh, it's been really good. I think we got some new followers.
Nice. Tons of new. I'm looking at the live numbers here. They just skyrocketed.
Did they? Oh, yeah. Awesome. Okay, good. It was that fly. He was a good.
That's, you know what? I let the gnat take over.
You did.
And look what happened.
It's probably someone who was like, I'd always want to be a fly on the wall during Ross's podcast.
Like if I can be reincarnated.
Yeah, then now they're here.
Oh, man, I'm really sorry if that's your reincarnation wish. That is not. I'm gonna swat it if I get the chance. I'm sorry. It's gonna.
That's something else.
That's whatever. There's a lot of stuff floating around in here.
Yeah, there is.
So you were about to say something, and then
I think that's great. You should definitely ask people that. What's really funny is when I started stand up, I was really unhealthy, right? I needed all these this validation and stuff. And then when I stopped needing validation from others, when I started working on stopping needing validation from others, because it's not like it's just gone. It's just that I'm working on it. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I don't need stand up anymore? Like, what if I just needed stand up to get validation? And like, what if now that I love myself, I don't need people to laugh?
Wow, yeah. And
I was like, oh my gosh, like, is this going to be like, am I not going to be funny anymore? Is it going to, and I think to answer your question is I was Notepad before social media existed. You know what I mean? Like that's always been something that and I think I would deeply be that way. But also I love having deep conversations. It's something that I love to speak to you because like, we can just like have these like with, I think like, not every boyfriend, not every friend, not every girlfriend, not every relationship can be all of the things, right? So I think like with every friendship, I get something from it that I don't get from like my intimate relationship, from my friendships, from my dad or whatever it is. I think that we get different things from each friendship that we have. And something that is so fulfilled with my friendship with you is that like we have these like amazing conversations. And I love that so much with people. And not everyone wants to do that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes a lot of people make fun of me for it because I'm always like, I swear, like people will come up to me after a show or whatever and they'll be like, they just know me. Like, it's just like me. I'm someone who like, I'm going to be probably positive or like, I'm just going to try to talk about meditation or try to talk about therapy. I'm going to try to like, they make fun of me for it. Whereas I used to not talk about it because I didn't want people to judge me. But now I'm like, this is me. Like, I do want to talk about meditating. I do want to talk about therapy. Tell me more about your parents and why you are the way you are. Like, I want to hear all of that. Where I used to like totally hide that. I can't say that if I meet someone who I know wants to have just like a surface level conversation, I'm not going to try. Like, it's okay. Yeah. I'm fine with that. But without social media, I still think I'm me. Like, and I can honestly say that only out of as of like the last 2 years. But I like me. I don't need others. I really do. I like me. And I think people can see that now. And I didn't always like me. I genuinely just couldn't stand me. And I would be doing the same thing. I would still have my notepad. I would still be writing it down. I would still try to make people laugh and not like cracking jokes and I do have a sarcastic sense of humor, but it wouldn't be for anything other than just it's genuinely what I love. I love to laugh. I think it is so cool, like laughing and smiling and just it's part of me. I do it when I'm alone, like that sounds weird, but
no, that's oh, Shaena, you're so funny. No, I totally get what you're saying. Man, I feel like you just gave this amazing answer to a question that I sort of asked you, but now I'm like, I feel like I should ask people that question.
Yeah, I think it's cool, but also I don't think anyone's going to be able to give you an honest answer that quickly because I think about that often. You know what I mean? I know the answer to that question because I think about it. I'm like, what do you do? Is this for you? I got to like create my life by design about like what I genuinely want for myself, not what other people want, but other people probably, if it's their first time ever hearing something like that, I wonder if they're going to have an answer for you or if it's something they have to think about, I don't.
Honestly, I want them to think. You know what I mean? I almost want them to not be able to be like, oh yeah, well this. I want them to be like, whoa, I don't know. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like even if it's somebody that doesn't use social media that much, like it's not about that. It's just like, well, whatever you do, like it's kind of just like, who are you at your core? Like what do you actually do?
It's kind of like how some people I don't know, like give to charity or something, but they're like, oh, I just gave a charity. Like it's like the idea of, would you still give, like, I remember one time I gave like food to this homeless man and he was sleeping on the side of the road. And I was with somebody who was like, oh, we should wake him up and let him know. And I was like, what? Like, why are we going to wake him up? The Manor video taught me that you don't wake anyone up ever. That's like a sin. Actually, I learned that in school. That's weird. Sorry, I just had a thought. That's crazy. I learned in school that you're not allowed to wake up your parents because you're robbing them from sleep and that it's a sin. Like I learned this in like my Jewish school. Anyway, the homeless man was sleeping and I remember I gave him like some food and I remember the person that I was with was like, should we wake him? And in my head, I didn't want to wake him at all. I wanted, just to give him the food. But I remember thinking, like, I think there are some people who would want to be like, hey, look at me. I'm giving this to you. See what I'm doing?
Yep.
Whereas if no one's looking, do you still want to do that good thing? Do you still want to be kind? Do you still want to give to charity or whatever if no one's going to see it?
Yep. It's a weird battle.
Yeah.
Because, like, there are and I don't need to tell the stories, but, like, there are things that I have done, similar things like that where it's, like, almost in my head, I literally, like, there's a small part where I'm like, I didn't document that.
Yep.
Because I think it's not even like that I want to share and be like, look how awesome I am. For me, it's almost a part of it of like, hey, reminder to maybe, hey, it's cool to maybe do some like cool things. So yeah, and I do think that some people who share that stuff are like, hey, let's show that there is good happening and we are giving this homeless person food or whatever.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I think the other 50% is like,
sure,
look how amazing I am.
Oh my God.
That is the weirdest thing of like, there's stuff that I've done that nobody knows about.
Can you tell us?
Yeah, right now. Yeah, we got another hour. I'll like explain every good thing I've ever done. But it's like, and it's okay that people don't know that. Mm-hmm. It's like people don't have to know that.
Yeah.
Because again, if the internet didn't exist, I could tell a friend.
Sure.
But why would I even for them to be like, dude, nice job.
Nice, yeah.
You're a sick person, dude. Like, you're awesome.
You're like really cool.
Like, what a date? Wow. I'm like, all right, dude. But like, I don't know. It's just like there's so much of that of just like, do you create just for other people to see it?
Yeah.
Do you, and those are things that I've had to like think myself over the years. You know what I mean? Of like, am I... because there was a while like I would use my Instagram and I just posted things that were trendy because I knew I was gaining a following from it.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, this is what they want. And like I was having fun doing it. But I was like, wait, is this actually what I want to do? No, it's not. And it's like, oh, I'm going to post about this or I'm going to post about that. And it's like you see the numbers drop and you're like, oh, damn, like they don't care about this at all. Which then is a whole other weird conversation of like, well, do people care about you or do they care about when you give them something they want? You know what I mean? Like that's a whole other weird thing of like, and that's really with social media, but like how many of those people were like, Ross is a cool creator and anything he does, I support. That's cool. I want to see all his creations. Because there was a chunk of people who were like, oh, you're not posting things like this anymore. You're never going to hear from me again. So it's like this weird, like, oh, like what part of me did you like? Where it's like if somebody jokes to me now about like my long captions on Instagram, they're like, dude, you're fucking journal entries of captions. And I'm like, well, if you really don't like that, then you actually don't like me. So what do you like from me? You know what I mean? What do you like from me? What is it? Is it that I do this for you or do that for you or bring you in and get you involved in like, you know what I mean? It's like the same people sometimes who are like, don't care about, the deep conversations or the long captions or the meaning behind things are the same people who are like, bro, anything you do, let me know, man. I'll be there. I want to be involved. Well, why do you want to be involved? Because I don't know if you want to be involved because of me. I don't know if you really want to help me do this. It sounds like you're looking to get something out of it, and it wouldn't be a problem if it was like, hey, I want to come onto a video set and I want to learn.
Sure.
Oh, cool. Sure. Hey, dope. Yeah, let's do that. But when it gets into the weird, like, hype sort of mentality of like, anything you need, bro, let me know. I'll be there. I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of your journey. It's like, I want so bad. Like I've told you enough ideas. I think at this point, I want to work alongside people.
Yeah.
I want to sit in a writer's room and freaking come up with ideas for shows together with other people. But I've like started to notice those things and it makes me feel weird because I'm like, are we friends? Because it's like you never comment on, and I know this is just a specific example, but it's like you never comment on those long journal entry captions about how I talk about how I live with mental health or something. You never respond and say, dude, me too. Thank you for sharing this. I feel this way. Or you never text me and say those things. But you show up when you have an idea that you really think I should do. You know what I mean? And that's like when it starts to tiptoe in that weird territory. And I feel like I've started to identify that more and more recently.
I want to ask you something, and I do not mean this with any like.
Please,
this
ask
is just
all the questions.
what if someone comes to you with an idea, okay? And they don't care about your long journal entry. They don't really care about you. And they have an idea for some script. I don't know. They want you to do, I don't know, whatever someone comes to you about, What if you didn't stop and assume? What if you didn't have to think about what their intention is? What if you didn't think about why are they doing this? What if you just either did it or you didn't? But what I'm hearing from you is that that takes energy. You know what I mean? To have to wonder what people's intentions are, to have to wonder what someone wants from you. And what if you didn't wonder? What if you let it, what if you just you went with your intuition about what you felt? But what I'm hearing is that yeah, I'm sure you're going to have people in your life like that, Ross. I'm sure a ton of people are going to be that way. And you know how much energy it's going to take from you to have to stop and think every single time? But what do they want? Are they a good friend? But what do they truly... But what if you just let it happen? And or you decide from your intuition, yes or no. But what if you didn't give it so much thought? Because at the end of the day, that's taken away from your energy, from your creativity, from your power.
Yeah.
And I don't mean just say yes to everyone. And I don't mean just say no to everyone.
Yep.
But it's almost and I only say this because I used to be this way when people just wanted to be my friend. I'd be like, well, are you a good friend? Are you going to lie to me? Are you going to talk shit about me? You talk shit about other people, so you're probably going to talk shit about me. And I'd overthink, not that you're overthinking, but I would overthink people's intentions. And when I let go of what's that word? When I would anticipate ahead of time, why someone was asking me something. And it was exhausting. It was tiring. And I lost so much of my creativity because I was constantly having to think about, well, why does whatever want to help me write a joke? Or why does whatever want to write with me? What does he want from me? Or this was before stand-up, so it wasn't things like that. It was more well, why do you want to be my friend? Is it because you know that I do things for people? Is it because you know that I'm a good person? Is it because you know that I want you to like me so bad that I'm going to go get your dog at 3:00 in the morning or whatever?
Right.
And I just, what I want is as I'm hearing you speak is I just wonder what if you didn't think about those things? What if you didn't?
Yeah, and you're 100% right. And that's I think that's what I'm trying to articulate is I feel like I'm in the midst, that's a new identifying thing that
and I don't want to be right. That's not, I'm just playing a game here.
I think I was rambling and doing a poor job at explaining
you weren't rambling.
I've identified those sort of things. And I feel like I'm in the middle of that new growth point of where I'm not so much getting stuck in the cycle of looking at their text for 20 minutes of what do they really want?
Yeah.
I feel like it's a newfound confidence in being able to pretty quickly just be hey, no, it's I don't have to give it energy.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I was trying to explain is because you're 100% right and because I would do that all the time. And again, I'm still in the midst of getting through out of that phase where it's I identify those things and instead of sitting on it and stewing on it, why did they do that and why did they hit me up for that? It's more so just oh no, that's either is or is not worth my energy, and I don't have to give it more energy than what it needs to be because I used to be that person who would sit and just think of it, or I would just say yes.
Oh, yes. And then think about it later on, be
I would say yes and then regret the whole thing and be because then when I wouldn't at least process it really quick, I would say yes because I was so happy to work on something or have someone even care enough about you to want you to help them. I would then get drained of even more energy after doing it with them and finding out they didn't really want to do it. They weren't in it for the right reasons, or they didn't care about what I could bring to the table. It was more so do it for me. So that was even a part of my learning curve. Sure. Right? It was oh wait, when I am just jumping into it and saying, yes, hey, yeah, let's go. Sure. I find in 3 weeks, I'm I should have never, because then I would put it on myself. I'd be I let them down. Where then I think later it kind of switched where again, it's not something that I'm sitting and stewing on, but it's I can make that decision rather quickly now of okay, I haven't heard from you in 6 months. And again, I'm not going to sit overthink the intentions, but it's I can pretty quickly be I don't know. Or I'll give it a shot and then in a conversation can pretty quickly decide. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think where my head goes now with, again, kind of being confident and knowing what I can or cannot help people with is in any of those situations, I always try and at least set them up with something. Like I still try and give them a little bit of something, but not my time.
I love that because that's your power, is your time, is how much time you're putting into thinking or doing. Yeah.
And it's like I'll sit, and if somebody says, hey, bro, I've got this awesome idea. Like genuinely, I'm using this as an example because it happened a couple weeks ago. Like I got hit up by somebody who, is whatever. And they were like, I have this perfect idea. You and me could do it. I guarantee we could get like millions of followers. And I'm like, all right, well, you're already off on the wrong foot because that's not what I'm looking for. But instead of just being like, no, or instead of thinking about it, saying yes, and then thinking about it for 3 weeks and being like, what did I do? I was just like, hey, I don't really think that's my thing. I love the idea though. I think if you wanted to pursue it, maybe, try these couple things. If you ever need some like opinion or advice, I'm here for it. But I don't think I'm the person to do it with you. You know what I mean? To where it was like, It became a little bit of an easier a process.
Sure.
And that, again, that's like a new thing that I feel like I've been like learning how to do. Like, it's okay to say no. You don't always have to say yes. And then you don't have to get stuck on that decision.
Sure.
It can be a thing of like, hey, I'll give you the ideas I have, or I'll give you the encouragement that I have because I want to see anyone try anything. Like, I think at this point, you could tell me any idea and I'll be realistic about it. But I'm also going to be like, yes, do it. And here's how. Yeah. Or here's how I could help.
Yeah.
Or here's maybe some things to think about. Or here's my experience with that. Or like whatever it is, right? And I think that's definitely a thing I've just learned over the years. And I think I'm just starting to settle in to like figuring out like how do I handle those answers? You know what I mean? Yeah. How do I can I try and encourage them without having to be the leading force of them getting it done. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's kind of like when I was a doula for a little bit, something we learned is you can't care more than your client, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can't care about this decision more than you do. I can't work harder than you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm hearing is you're saying is like, yeah, you can't get so involved in their idea that you care more about it than them.
Oh, because I've done it 1,000 times. Sure. Yeah.
And I didn't, so I guess I didn't get that, and I didn't mean to, I'm just...
No, not at all.
I've learned something very recently, and it's just changed my life, and it's just, it's kind of like what we've been saying, that nobody cares. It's who cares. Because for me, people's idea and thoughts of me was paralyzing for me. I can't post this picture. They're going to be like, what the hell's wrong with you? What if I do stand-up and people think it's weird? Or what if who cares? Like who cares?
Yep.
I don't want to wear this thing because what if they think that who cares? I don't want to go to this function because if they see me and they think, who cares? And it has just been so freeing to just not and not to not care about anything, but and to add to that, another thing I'm learning is that when someone tells you something, take it as a fact. Don't assume based on I remember I was having a conversation with someone and they texted me and they had said something I forget what it was at the time, but I remember asking I have a spiritual practice teacher, and I remember asking him, I was like, well, he was really rude to me, and I think he was assuming that, I think what he was saying was that and he was like, wait, Shaena, I'm so sorry, can you read me the text one more time? I was like, yeah, he said this, it was 3 words, and he was like, okay, so what you just said to me was like lots of words, where did those come from? And I'm like, well, I know he meant it. He's like, well, how do you know that he meant it? What do you mean? So I'm learning that if someone tells you something, take it as face value. That's it. Cause trying so hard to cause I was like this with my mom. My mom was very passive aggressive. Okay. So when my mom said something to me, I had to think about, what does she really mean though? If I listen, she's going to be mad at me. What should I? So I did that with all my relationships. When someone said something to me, I had to think about, what do they really mean? What is this? Is this going to get me into trouble? Is she going to use me? Am I going to be taken advantage of? What's going to happen? And it has been the most freeing thing in the world to, what you say to me is what I mean. And you know how some people will be passive aggressive, they'll be mad at you or secretly whatever they want. I don't, it's almost I almost don't know what sarcasm is anymore, because what you're saying to me is what I'm going to take. What you say to me is I trust you enough to articulate your feelings. And if you're telling me you want to do an idea, you want to do something, I'm not going to stop and think about are they going to care? Are they going to you either put the energy into it or you don't, but taking the guessing game out of it's just been so freeing for me. And so I guess what I was just saying what if,
No, I love that.
But it sounds like you're well on your way there, if not already.
Trying.
Trying. And me too.
Yes. I think a lot of that for sure is kind of a never ending cycle.
Of course. And you're always working on it.
Yes. Because I think that's where I'm at with it, right? It's like I can identify those things and I know where to put my energy or to not put my energy.
Sure.
And it's like or time or whatever it is. But there's always going to still be those moments where I'm like, okay, I think I'm assuming too much. I think I'm thinking way too much about this. Like, so 100% accurate in that. Like you were spot on, like for sure. Cause I don't know. It's a thing that, again, I think is never, I mean, nothing's ever perfect, but it's like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to like solidify that perfectly. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm in the middle of it right now and I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good at this, but there'll still be those moments where I'm like,
of course.
What is this really? Wait, no. And then I will spend the 5 minutes thinking about it. And I'm like, why did I just spend 5? Like, no, just have the conversation. Just say yes or no, and here's why.
But sometimes you won't know until you say yes or no, right? Like sometimes until you take it or you don't, you won't know the right answer. But it's the thing. It's like what we were talking about earlier. Like the suffering in your mind is worse than the actual execution of the thing, because you spending time thinking about what their intentions really are is going to like raise your cortisol levels. You're going to be on this this kind of like on edge or thinking about it and like, am I being taken advantage of? Are they not being genuine? But in reality, like you're spending that time suffering, right? Like I use the word suffering. that's like a Buddhist term. I don't know, like suffering sounds so like hard, but just like suffering in your mind about it, when in reality, what if you're wrong? What if you're projecting?
Mm-hmm.
What if they are genuinely wanting to work with you, or maybe they don't know how to articulate it? Or what if you say no? And you don't have to go back and regret it, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes our mind makes us think things that aren't even there. And so all I'm saying is, like, I guess you never know, I don't know. Like, and I don't know. I think you're great. And I'm not saying, like, go change everything you do.
What are you saying, Shaena? I'm so upset and offended. I cannot believe it.
No, I'm just saying, like, it's just changed my life. Like, to just be like, I'm going to take what you're saying as fact. Mm-hmm. And if it's not true, then you know what? Like, I'll figure that out later. But for right now, what you're telling me is what I'm hearing, and let's do it.
Yes.
And sometimes until after you do it, you don't realize that it was, and then yes, maybe there's some time wasted, or maybe yes, you did suffer,
but it can all be a learning experience.
But also you can learn from it.
Yep.
Yeah, you never know. But also, what if what if you say no to something because your mind told you that it was going to be this thing, but then I guess that's like going back and regretting, and we don't want to do that either. So I'm learning too. Okay, I'm working on it. I don't know.
Listen, we never said that we are professionals at any of the stuff that we are talking about.
No.
Okay, so Shaena, I feel like we could sit here for 5 hours again and talk about any and all the things, much like we are, that we are not professional at, folks. We're just, we're learning. But I want to start wrapping us up.
Yes.
But there's still so much I want to talk. Maybe I'll just have to have you on for part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. Hey, Shane's back again. She brought the gnat. I hope all of her boyfriends are listening. Can't wait. So to kind of reel us back in a little bit, now that you've been doing comedy, you are now a stand-up comedian. You're doing it, which I still cannot even fathom how you get up on a stage and do it, because I love being funny, but I would be so terrified. What is it? Because there's some ideas you and I have like shared back and forth in our conversations, but like, looking forward, like looking ahead with your comedy, like what is it that you want to grow into? What are the opportunities that you're looking for? Like, is it like, I want to be the coolest stand-up comedian ever? Or is it like, I want to do stand-up and I want to write for shows, or I want to get into skits? Or like, I guess this is also me asking, like, what just fun ideas are you looking forward to, or that you want to try, or that you want to try and like build up to?
That's a great question. So as much as I have goals and as much as there's things that I want to reach, I also like live my life by this feeling of, I do what brings me joy, right? Like, I love stand-up because it's fun. I'm not searching for X. Like, when I first started, it was like, oh yeah, like I can't wait to get like a Netflix special. But now it's kind of like, I'm not reaching for anything, because I think whatever like is going to happen is going to be better than I could have imagined, because I didn't realize that that's what was for me. So I think what I'm doing is like I'm just searching for joy, in the sense of I'm doing what feels good, and whatever comes to me is going to come to me. I recently have been given like a really cool like writing opportunity, which 7 months ago I would have said like I don't want to write for someone, like, and now I'm like, wait, it's one of the coolest things I've ever done, is like this new writing project that I'm doing. And so what I love to do is I would love to have some sort of like a platform where I can help other comedians. Like, I would love to sit in a writing room and like maybe write sketches, or like maybe like, just like, I think like collaborations are so much fun. And that's something that I really enjoyed from stand-up, is like sitting in a room with 5 comedians or like a director and just joking around, like talking about things like that, I think is so much fun. And so I love that side of it. Like, I love to create. I really, really do. And then as far as stand-up goes, like, I want to write as much as I can, and I want to get as good as I can. And wherever it leads me is where it's going to lead me. And I hope that like I'm open and willing to accept whatever comes my way. And I hope that like that I don't accept the things that aren't really meant for me. I hope that I have the ability to see that. But if not, I'll take them until, later I realize it wasn't meant for me. But what I really want is just to continue growing. Like, I just want to get better is where I am right now with it. And yeah.
You know what's funny is I think you are already one of like the funnest people to be around I've never seen your stand up yet.
Thank you.
So now that makes me more excited.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, what is her stand up like? Like, just chatting with her is the most fun thing, and it's so funny. And so now I'm like, that's the thing that I'm excited for, is to actually go watch you do stand up at some point. I need to make that happen.
Yeah, you haven't. I didn't think about that. That'll be cool. That'll be really cool. I think it's interesting too is I went on a bachelorette party a couple of months ago, and I don't think anyone knew that I was a stand-up comedian. Maybe like the girl whose wedding I was in. But I'm not one who like, I'm not always on, right? Like, I'm not constantly trying to like make people laugh or running bits. Sometimes I will run a bit by someone without them knowing, but like sometimes, but not often. But I remember this girl who like was like, me and her were just cracking up the entire time, all of us, everybody. And she was like, Shaena, like, it's so crazy. Like, you had just made me laugh so hard. And like in my head, it was like so cool because I wasn't trying, you know what I mean? And like, that was a really cool feeling, because I think I have always been able to make people laugh, and I'm not like trying so hard at it. But then sometimes it feels like when I'm trying really hard, they don't laugh, But I'm excited for you to come and see me do stand-up. I will say my stand-up is very different than like my natural self.
Right.
And I can't wait until it's not. But I'm so excited. I love when people who know me as Shaena get to come and see me do stand-up, because it is so cool. And I can't wait for you to come to a show.
Yes.
Soon.
And hopefully at some point, it would be awesome if I could provide that really cool writer's room where like me and you and whoever else is getting to sit around a table and freaking just toss out all the most fun ideas for whatever show we're working on. Because
I want to do something like that soon. Maybe not even, dude, like I will, yes.
It is a dream of mine.
Really?
Like,
yeah, well, we can maybe do something like that soon.
I have watched like documentaries of how shows and stuff are made, like comedy shows, and just seeing the footage of the people just sitting around a table and just like, what makes everyone laugh, and does it make sense for the show? And then they write it down on a board, and I see that, and I'm like, oh my God, if I could ever experience like
we're gonna do it
collaboration soon. Like that, please.
Yes, I have some ideas up my sleeve.
This is me publicly begging you on a podcast. Please, Shaena, can we do that?
That is honestly something I want to. I didn't realize that. Like, I'm thinking about doing something like that soon. I would love to have like a writer's room and do something. And when you said you would like to be in a writer's room, in my head, I was like, oh, like, you're not like, I don't think of you as a comedian, but like, you write funny movies, you write funny scripts, funny, and storytelling. So like, of course, yes, in my head that popped up, like, of course you should be there too. And yeah, maybe we can do something like that soon.
Listen, even though I begged, you don't have to invite me, all right?
No, we all saw.
Okay, good.
No, thank goodness. Oh man, it's
I will edit that. What timestamp is that? I'm going to edit that part out. Begging Shaena, we'll get that out of there.
There's a mat. Oh, there it is. Oh no, shoot.
Oh yeah, no, let's.
No.
That was,
he went away.
He wants to be involved in the writer's room too.
Yeah, he wants to come to the writer's room as well.
Last couple questions.
Sure.
So if somebody is listening to this and they're dealing, well, I'm dragging us all around here. We're like talking about writer's room and comedy and all this sort of stuff. I'm going to take us back in the deep end for a second. If somebody's listening to this and they are dealing with some of those self-esteem issues, where they are trying to please other people, and they're overthinking the situations, and they don't know whether to say yes to things or no to things, and they break it down too much and they overthink it and all this sort of stuff. Everything we've talked about. If somebody's dealing with that sort of stuff, having experienced what you've experienced up to this point, what is it you'd share with that person? And again, of course, with a disclaimer that, hey, we're still learning. We know. We got to figure it out. But knowing what you know now, like what would you say to that person?
I don't mean to laugh. I would say the first thing I would say is to meditate. Meditation, I think, is like the key to everything. That's just me personally. Aside from that, I would say, like, the first step I would say is to, I would say it's the first step to doing that is to write out a list of the best version of you. Like, what are the characteristics that the best version of you is? So, like, I did this, like, years ago. I remember I was like, okay, Shaena, like, you're full of anxiety. You hate yourself. You've got all this stuff going on with you. Like, if you could be tomorrow, if I could snap my fingers and you were amazing, what would you look like? And I wrote it down. I really did. I was like, I would be honest, and I would be kind, and I would, like, not lie. And that's what honesty is. I would be fun, and I would be kind and caring, and I would be a good friend. I would be good to myself. I would love myself. I would be going to the gym. I would, eat healthy, whatever. And then start working toward being those things, because it's easier than it seems. Like, if you want to be honest, you wake up and you make conscious decisions not to tell lies. If you, want to be a kind person, you make it, I would say, it's a creative list of what you look like as the best version of you, and then slowly start implementing those things into your life.
I'm going to throw another cliche question at you that you probably get a lot at this point in time. If somebody's wanting to start stand-up, somebody is thinking about, like, man, I think I'm funny. I hope I'm funny. I want to try and be funny. I don't know. I want to give it a shot. What is it you're saying to that person? So my answer to that, which I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else. My first piece of advice is to take a writing class. I don't know very many comedians who would probably say that as their first advice. But I would say take a writing class. Like, that for me was, like, changed my life, because I recognize structure in jokes now. And I think that, like, once you like know the basis of it, I think you can like make anything funny. I would say, like, get on stage. Number one, just do it. Just get up there, just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off, get up there and realize that it's not as hard as you think. And second, I would say write every day. Write as much as you freaking can. Write all the time. And take a writing class. Those are my three things. Get on stage, just start writing, and then take a class to teach you how to actually write. And then write as much as you can and get up on stage as much as you can. And don't obsess about it. Like, be healthy with it. But, yeah. If you were giving me that advice directly, I'm going to be like, so how can I do all that without the stage part? I don't know if I can do that part. Okay, so we are coming to the official end of the show. Because, like I said, we could sit here and we could talk for another 6 hours. No. I guarantee it. Yeah. I am so happy we finally got to do this. Thank you so much for having me. I've gotten to hear the story of Shaena. And we jumped around so much. There's probably tons that we didn't even get to. But now, actually, the fun part is we did this for the podcast. But now when we talk in real life, we don't have to worry about avoiding anything and saving it for the podcast. So if there are other things, it can finally be like, oh, yeah, let's talk about this. Like, I'll tell you this story. Like, we don't have to save it for the podcast anymore. It's perfect. What's crazy is that we sat there for 4.5 hours and spoke one time, right? With avoiding all of these topics. So what's crazy is that, like, how, I don't know. Yeah, but I don't know. I've tried to get decent at, like, okay, I need to save certain things for the podcast, like, and hopefully I will be interviewing you next on my podcast. Ooh, see, I was gonna say something about it. I didn't know if you wanted me to spoil anything or not, but I mean, I would love to do all this again for your podcast, which hopefully at some point in the future is going to be in existence. Absolutely. And I would tell people to go check it out, but I don't really, can't say that yet. Not yet. But at some point, but actually by the time that somebody maybe in the future finds this episode, it will exist.
Yes.
So I can't tell you what it's called, and I'm not exactly sure where you can find it, but wherever there's podcasts, just go look up stuff about Shaena, find her on the internet.
Yeah.
And then it'll probably be there. So someone in the
Absolutely.
future just got this.
Heck yeah.
Right now it doesn't exist, but future person is like, oh, hell yeah. Thank God I never listened to Ross's podcast when they drop, and I listened to them 6 months later, because now I have this new show to figure out. Okay, so final question.
Okay.
I end every episode with the same question. What happened? End of the episode, Nat has officially not survived.
Oh no.
R.I.P. to the co-host.
And it was a complete accident.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here like, yeah, talking with my hands. Well, it had to happen at some point, I suppose.
Yeah, it did.
Now we're just playing with
Now
his dead body.
Yeah. Oh no.
This is fun. So I end every episode with the exact same question. If everybody in the world, everywhere, was on the other end of the microphone with you speaking right this moment, and they could hear you, they could understand you, it doesn't matter where they are, where they live, what language they speak, they can understand you. You have a live mic connected to everyone in the world. What is it that you would want them to hear?
Follow me on Instagram no, I'm kidding.
You say you're changing the Instagram.
I am, or else I would. No. I have heard you ask this to people, and I have thought about it. So I think that if I had a microphone connecting me, to the world, and I could say one thing, it would be to figure out how to love who you are unconditionally, whatever that takes, whatever that means, to find it within yourself, to learn the term compassionate self-discipline, to be kind to yourself, and to learn how to love yourself, to learn to date yourself, to be your friend, to genuinely give yourself the life that you've always dreamed of, because you can have it. And so I would say to go out there and do whatever it is, to learn how to love yourself enough to give yourself the life that you've always wanted, because it's out there.
Shaena, that was a freaking blast.
That was so much fun.
We did it. We finally did it.
We did it. I'm so excited.
We made
Thank you.
the podcast
We
happen.
did.
That was so much fun.
Thank you,
so much
honestly,
freaking fun.
Ross. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we officially say goodbye, I guess I was going to say tell the people where they can find you on the internet, but I mean that stuff might be changing
I know.
soon. So that's
Should we just get rid of this whole
hard.
episode and have to do it another day then?
I think let's
yeah.
just scrap the entire conversation.
Okay.
So that way when we have the appropriate social handles,
Right.
then we can do it all again, all in promotion. Because that's all
Yes.
this was, right? You just wanted to
Yes.
do the podcast just to promote your Instagram, right?
Yeah. The whole podcast was just so at the end I could. Yes. Yeah.
I figure.
Yeah.
I assume. I would only assume. I figured that's what we were doing here. Well, folks, I'll say this.
My goodness.
You can find Shaena around the internet, for sure, at whatever her @handle may be in the future. But realistically, if you're listening to this, at the time of its release, she'll be tagged in the photos. And then in the future, the @handles change if you change them and you're tagged in something. So it's still going to be there. So we can't tell you what it is right now, but it'll be there. So if you want to go find Shaena, you can do that. Just click on the pictures. She'll be tagged in the caption, whatever it is. They can find you.
Absolutely.
Whether you're Iggaby, whether
Right.
you're Young Shay, whether you're Lil Iggaby, whatever, whatever all these different names that you've accumulated over the course of this podcast, they can find you out there.
Shaena.
That was so much fun.
Thank
Nat
you.
and all.
Nat and all.
We even had a Nat. The Nat died at the
and
end.
he came full circle.
What a story arc that was, honestly.
Wow.
We're sitting here learning all this stuff about life, talking about life, and there's just a Nat going through its entire circle of life during this episode.
Wow.
We're going to have to do a lot to top that on your podcast at some point.
Ross, this was a blast. Thank you so much for
Thank you. We did it.
We did it.
That's it.
Yes.
That is it. We have made a podcast.
We did it.
All right, big thanks one more time to Shaena for being on the show and talking to me for even more hours of her life. It's been very fun getting to know her more and more over the last couple months. That we've actually become friends in real life, and I'm stoked that now you guys have gotten to know her a little bit better as well. She's honestly a blast to talk to. I need to go and see her do stand-up sometime, honestly, and I implore you to follow her online, keep up with those things, find the dates, watch for them, and maybe go and do the same. Honestly, if you're like me and you are a huge fan of stand-up comedy, but have literally never went once to a live stand-up, I'd say maybe it's time for people like us to go and actually check it out. So hopefully I'll be doing that sometime soon. Another thing that I hope I'm doing soon is being a guest on Shaena's podcast. So sometime in the near future after this show's release, she should be launching that. So, of course, be on the lookout for her podcast, hopefully coming to a feed near you very soon, so you can keep up with her stand-up, any dates that she's doing, her eventual podcast, or anything else that she does involving the comedy scene by, of course, following her on social media. She'll be tagged in the show notes, and of course, she'll be tagged, and you'll see the @handle, whatever she decides it to be. It'll be tagged on all the fun little bright yellow pieces of content I post for this show as well. It'll be out there. Easy to find, folks. It is easy to find. So, let's wrap this one up officially as I bid you adieu. I want to remind you to subscribe on iTunes, follow on Spotify, follow the show on social media at WYDHpod. That's on Twitter and that's on Instagram. Most importantly, tell a friend about the show. Tell the internet even. Screenshot this or hit that little share icon on Spotify and toss it in your Instagram story. Tag me, tag Shaena, tag the show. Let me know that you checked it out. Let other people know that you checked it out. And if you don't really want to do any of that, I will at least say thanks for looking, thanks for listening, and I'll be back next episode with a brand new guest you may or may not know of and a brand new story that you for sure never heard. Goodbye and good night.